Welcome to Most Relaxing Facts. Tonight, we're opening an old map, one that shows places the world has nearly forgotten, hidden temples swallowed by jungle vines, abandoned cities where only the wind walks through empty streets, islands that disappeared from charts, towns that time left behind. These are the silent corners of our world. Places where history whispers instead of shouts, where nature has reclaimed what humanity built, where mystery settles like morning mist over ancient stones. Over the next few hours, I'll guide you gently through 100 of these forgotten places, each location a story half told, each ruin a doorway into the past. Let these quiet tales of lost civilizations and abandoned dreams carry you softly into the deepest, most peaceful sleep. If you enjoy these explorations of the world's hidden wonders, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Most Relaxing Facts. Your support helps us uncover more of Earth's best-kept secrets together. But before we begin our journey to these silent places, let's prepare ourselves. Take a slow, deep breath in, hold it gently, and release it completely, letting the day fade away. Feel yourself settling, grounding, ready to wander through forgotten halls and overgrown courtyards, ready to discover places where time stands perfectly still. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just listen and let yourself drift. Our map is unfolding now. The journey to the world's most mysterious, forgotten places begins. Take a deep breath and let me guide you to places where time has paused, where cities once filled with voices now hold only silence, where nature is slowly, patiently reclaiming what humans built. Tonight, here on Most Relaxing Facts, we're visiting the abandoned places of the world, ghost towns and empty islands, cities evacuated and cities swallowed by sand, places where the only sounds are wind through broken windows and waves against empty shores. These are not places of sadness, but of peace, of nature's gentle persistence, of the way the earth transforms what we leave behind. They are liminal spaces, caught between what was and what will be, suspended in a quiet that feels almost sacred, almost like the world is holding its breath. Imagine walking down a street where no footsteps have sounded in decades, where apartments still contain the lives their occupants left behind, books open to pages they'll never finish, pianos waiting for hands that will never return, dining, tables set for meals that were never eaten. Imagine the profound stillness of these places, the way silence becomes almost physical, almost tangible, something you can feel pressing against you like deep water. Tonight, we'll journey to Pripyat's rusting Ferris wheel and Hashima Island's concrete corridors, to towns buried in desert sand and villages where the jungle has reclaimed every building, to places preserved by cold and places preserved by dryness, to islands where seals now live in human cottages and valleys, where smoke rises from fires that have burned underground for over 60 years. So settle deeper into comfort, let your muscles relax, and drift with me to these quiet places, these abandoned spaces, these cities reclaimed by nature, where time moves differently and silence has texture and depth. Let's begin our peaceful walk through the cities that nature is taking back. Pripyat, Ukraine was once home to 50,000 people, a young, modern Soviet city built to house the workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and their families. The city was less than 20 years old when disaster struck. Its population average age only 26, filled with young families and their children, with optimism about the socialist future, with life and noise and the everyday chaos of a thriving community. Then came April 26, 1986. The reactor exploded in the early morning hours, releasing radiation across the region. For more than a day, the city went about its business, unaware of the danger, while officials debated what to do. Then the evacuation order came. 3 hours to leave. Bring only what you can carry. You'll be back in 3 days. Nobody told them the truth, that they would never return, that 3 days would become forever. The buses came, forming long convoys that carried away the entire population in a single afternoon. People left behind nearly everything: furniture and photographs, toys and clothing, entire lives abandoned in the space of hours. Apartments were left with dishes in the sink, with laundry hanging to dry, with books open on tables, frozen mid-scene, mid-sentence, mid-life. Today, the only sound in Pripyat is the wind. The city stands empty, a monument to sudden absence, to lives interrupted. The famous Ferris wheel in the amusement park, which never officially opened, scheduled to debut on May 1st, just days after the disaster, now moves only when the wind pushes it, creaking rhythmically, a lonely sound echoing across empty streets and overgrown squares. The creaking has a particular quality: metal on metal, rust grinding against rust, a sound that speaks of decay and persistence, of something mechanical trying to function without purpose, moving not because anyone rides it, but because the wind won't let it rest. It's a ghostly sound, almost mournful, marking time in a city where time stopped in 1986. Nature has moved back into Pripyat with remarkable speed. Without humans to maintain the city, without pesticides and landscaping and the constant push against nature's encroachment, plants began reclaiming the streets immediately. Trees sprouted in cracks in the pavement. Vines climbed buildings. Gardens went wild, spreading beyond their original boundaries, merging into forests. Wildlife followed. Wolves returned to the region in large numbers, finding an ecosystem without human hunters, with plenty of prey. Rare Przewalski's horses, wild horses thought to be extinct in the region, now roam the empty boulevards, their hoofbeats echoing where car engines once roared. Elk and deer graze in the city centre. Birds nest in abandoned apartments, flying through glassless windows, building homes in human homes. The radiation remains. Pripyat will be dangerous for thousands of years, the contamination so deep that the area is called the exclusion zone, monitored and restricted. But nature doesn't understand radiation, doesn't know to stay away. The animals have higher cancer rates, shorter lifespans, but the population as a whole thrives because there are no humans hunting them, no cars hitting them, no habitat destruction. The absence of people has created, paradoxically, a wildlife refuge. Walking through Pripyat now, which is possible on guided tours, though you can't stay long, you see a city being eaten by the forest. Trees grow through apartment floors, their roots breaking through concrete. Moss covers everything. Buildings that were once pristine are now streaked with rust and decay, their walls stained by decades of rain, their interiors gutted by time and treasure hunters. But traces of the previous life remain. Pianos in music schools, their keys yellowed, but still capable of sound. Books in libraries, their pages brittle but still readable. A swimming pool now filled with toxic water and debris where children once played. Murals in schools, faded but still visible, showing Soviet dreams of space and progress. These fragments create a strange, emotional resonance. You're looking at ordinary life suddenly interrupted, preserved in decay, made haunting by absence. Humberstone, Chile, sits in the Atacama Desert, the driest place on Earth. This ghost town was once a thriving saltpeter mining community, home to thousands of workers and their families during the industry's boom in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The town had everything a community needed: a theatre, a swimming pool, a market, schools, churches, rows of workers' housing. When synthetic nitrates replaced natural saltpeter, the industry collapsed. Humberstone was abandoned in 1960, left to the desert, expected to decay and disappear like most abandoned towns. But the Atacama is so dry. Some areas haven't received measurable rainfall in decades, perhaps centuries, that decay barely happens. The wooden buildings haven't rotted. The metal hasn't rusted away. The fabric in the theatre still hangs, faded but intact. Paper signs still cling to walls, their texts readable despite decades of exposure. The desert has preserved Humberstone through desiccation, through removing all moisture, through creating conditions where the biological and chemical processes of decay simply can't occur. Walking through Humberstone feels surreal. The buildings are obviously abandoned, obviously empty, but they look like they could still be used, like workers might return at any moment. The theatre still has its seats. The swimming pool still has its diving board. The houses still have furniture, though everything is covered in fine desert dust, a powdery coating that muffles colour and softens edges. The air is perfectly dry, creating a peculiar sensation in your nose and throat, a feeling of moisture being pulled from your body. And the silence is profound. No insects, no birds, no rustle of vegetation, because there is no vegetation. Just wind occasionally moving across the desert, picking up dust, carrying it in swirls and eddies through the empty streets. Hashima Island in Japan, also known as Gunkanjima or Battleship Island, because its silhouette resembles a warship, is one of the world's strangest abandoned places. This tiny island, less than a mile in circumference, once held the highest population density in the world, with over 5,000 people living in closely packed concrete apartment buildings, working in the undersea coal mines that honeycombed the seabed beneath. The island was entirely artificial in its final form. Natural rock expanded with landfill, surrounded by seawalls to protect against typhoons, covered with concrete buildings stacked high and squeezed together. Every inch was used efficiently. The island had apartments, schools, hospitals, shops, shrines, and entertainment venues, a complete vertical city on less than 16 acres of land. When the coal mines closed in 1974, the island was abandoned in months. The population left en masse. There was no reason to stay without the mines, no other economy, no other purpose. The island was sealed off, forbidden to visitors for decades, left to the ocean and the weather. Today, Hashima is a concrete skeleton. The buildings stand empty, their windows broken by typhoon winds, their interiors gutted by decay and the salt air. The sea spray hits the structures constantly, creating a rhythmic sound, the hiss of waves, the spatter of water against concrete. the drip of moisture from upper floors to lower floors. In certain buildings, you can still see desks in the school, bathtubs in apartments, tiles in the communal bath, all coated in salt and rust, and the particular green-grey colour that concrete gets when exposed to the ocean for decades. The island looks like a ghost ship indeed, a vessel that was once full of life and purpose, now adrift and abandoned, slowly being consumed by the sea. The Japanese government now allows limited tourism, carefully controlled tours that walk through safe parts of the island, past buildings too dangerous to enter, through this monument to industrial ambition and its inevitable decline. Bodie, California, is perhaps the best preserved ghost town in America, maintained by the California State Park System in a state of arrested decay. This principle is simple. Nothing is repaired, nothing is restored, nothing is removed, but nothing is allowed to collapse entirely. Buildings are stabilized just enough to keep them standing, preserved exactly as they were found when the town was abandoned. Bodie was a gold rush town, one of the most violent and lawless communities in the Old West, with a population that peaked around 10,000 in the late 1870s. The town had a reputation for murder and vice, with shootings in the streets, a regular occurrence, with saloons and brothels outnumbering churches, with a cemetery that filled rapidly with men who died young and violently. When the gold ran out, Bodie died quickly. People left. Buildings were abandoned. Fires consumed entire blocks. By the 1940s, Bodie was essentially dead, a few stubborn holdouts living among hundreds of empty buildings. In 1962, the state took over, creating Bodie State Historic Park and implementing the arrested decay philosophy. Today, walking through Bodie feels like stepping into 1880 and finding everyone gone. The buildings are weathered and worn, but standing. Through the windows, glass still intact in many cases, you can see interiors exactly as they were left. Dust-covered plates on dining tables, set for meals never eaten. Bottles and cans on store shelves. Products no longer made by companies long defunct. Tools in workshops, waiting for hands that will never return. Clothing hanging on hooks. Shoes lined up by doors. The interiors are dim. The windows are dirty. The light filtered through decades of dust. Everything has a sepia tone, a faded quality, like old photographs made three-dimensional. And the silence is deep. Bodie sits at high altitude in a remote part of California, far from traffic and cities. The wind blows constantly across the high desert plain, whistling through broken windows, creaking through old wood, the only consistent sound in a town that once roared with saloons and stamp mills crushing ore. Kolmanskop, Namibia, is a ghost town in the Namib Desert, abandoned after the diamond rush ended in the 1950s. What makes Kolmanskop unique is what has happened since. The desert sand has invaded the buildings, flowing through open doors and broken windows, filling rooms completely, creating surreal interior landscapes of smooth, flowing dunes inside German colonial architecture. The sand moves slowly but inexorably, accumulating grain by grain, pushed by wind, finding its way into every space. In some houses, the sand reaches nearly to the ceiling, filling entire rooms, burying furniture and fixtures. In others, it creates perfect dunes, smooth curves and ripples inside rectilinear rooms, an organic form inside geometric structure. Walking through Kolmanskop's houses is disorienting. You enter a doorway, the door itself long gone, and find yourself climbing up and over an interior sand dune, walking on sand that slopes up toward windows now at ground level, now at ankle level. You see bathtubs filled with sand, sinks buried except for their faucets, wallpaper peeling from walls that emerge from the sand like artifacts being excavated. The weight of the sand creates unusual acoustics. Sound is absorbed, muffled, deadened. When you speak inside these rooms, your voice falls flat, doesn't echo, gets swallowed by the sand. The effect is like being in a library or a recording studio, that padded silence that tells you sound is being absorbed rather than reflected. The silence has physical presence, created by millions of grains of sand absorbing every vibration, every sound wave, every echo. The light inside these buildings is beautiful, filtered through doorways and windows, reflecting off pale sand, creating a warm, golden glow that shifts as the sun moves, as shadows lengthen, as the day progresses. Photographers love Kolmanskop for this light, for the surreal contrast between architectural decay and natural beauty, between human construction and natural reclamation. Greco, Italy, is a medieval village perched on a hilltop in southern Italy, abandoned due to a series of landslides, earthquakes, and floods that made the site increasingly unstable and dangerous. The village dates to the Middle Ages, its stone buildings and narrow streets, typical of Italian hill towns, built for defense and community, clinging to the steep hillside. The abandonment was gradual. A landslide in 1963 forced partial evacuation. An earthquake in 1972 caused more damage, and by 1980, the last residents had left. Greco now stands empty, its ancient stone arches and buildings slowly succumbing to gravity and weather, the hillside continuing its slow collapse, taking the town with it. What remains is hauntingly beautiful. The stone buildings have a timeless quality, looking almost unchanged from medieval times despite decades of neglect. The arches frame views of the valley below, of other hilltop towns in the distance, of the Basilicata landscape stretching to the horizon. The silence is profound. No residents, no traffic, no sounds of daily life, just wind moving through empty streets and the occasional sound of crumbling stone as the hillside continues its gradual subsidence. Greco has been used as a film location precisely because of its authentic desolation, its genuine decay. The town doesn't need set dressing or artificial aging. It's already a perfect ghost town, naturally weathered, organically abandoned, providing filmmakers with ready-made atmosphere. Kayaköy, Turkey, features hundreds of stone houses cascading down a mountainside, all abandoned, all missing their roofs, creating a skeleton town that looks carved into the landscape. This was once a thriving Greek village called Levisi, home to thousands of Greek Orthodox Christians who had lived here for centuries. In 1923, as part of the population exchange between Greece and Turkey following the Greco-Turkish War, the Greek population was forced to leave, relocated to Greece. The Turkish refugees who were supposed to replace them never settled permanently. The houses designed for Greek families didn't suit Turkish customs, and the site was considered unlucky after the forced displacement. The town was abandoned, left empty, the roofs gradually collapsing as wood rotted and tiles fell. What remains are stone walls, empty windows, doorways leading to nothing, a maze of ruins covering the hillside. Walking through Kayaköy, you climb stone staircases that lead from one level of ruins to another, peer into roofless churches where frescoes still cling to walls open to the sky, wander through what were once intimate domestic spaces, now completely exposed to the elements. The stone has weathered to a soft grey, creating a monochromatic landscape, a study in texture and shadow. The ruins merge with the rocky hillside, making it difficult sometimes to distinguish natural stone from worked stone, to see where the mountain ends and the town begins. Nature is reclaiming Kayakoi slowly. Grasses grow in cracks, bushes sprout from floors, birds nest in walls, but the stone resists, persists, will stand for decades or centuries more, a memorial to displacement and loss. Villaggio Ine in the Italian Alps was built in the 1960s as a utopian retreat for workers of the Italian petroleum company Eni. The village featured modernist architecture, clean lines and alpine settings, designed to provide workers and their families with idyllic vacations in the mountains. For a few decades, it thrived. Families came, children played, the dining halls filled with laughter, the chairlifts carried skiers up the mountains. Then the company changed. The facility was deemed too expensive to maintain and Villaggio Eni was abandoned. Nature moved in quickly in this alpine environment. Pine trees grew tall around the buildings, eventually hiding them from view. The forest, which had been cleared for the resort, returned with vigor, swallowing the village in green. Today, Villaggio Eni is hidden behind a curtain of overgrown pine trees, accessible only to those who know where to look, who are willing to hike into the forest and search for the ruins. The buildings are overtaken by vegetation, their modernist lines softened by moss and vines, their interiors dark with forest shade, their windows broken and filled with the green light that filters through the canopy. The sound in Villaggio Eni is the sound of the forest, wind through pine needles, a soft sibilant whisper, birds calling, occasionally a branch falling. The human sounds are gone, replaced by nature's orchestra, by the ambient noise of an alpine forest reclaiming what was briefly taken from it. Centralia, Pennsylvania, is unique among ghost towns because what drove its residents away can't be seen. An underground coal fire that has been burning since 1962. The fire started in a coal seam beneath the town, probably ignited by burning trash in an old mine entrance. It spread through the network of abandoned coal mines that honeycomb the ground beneath the town, and despite numerous attempts to extinguish it, the fire continues to burn. The fire releases carbon monoxide and other toxic gases which seep up through cracks in the ground. It heats the surface, making the ground hot to the touch in places, causing snow to melt in circular patches in winter, creating steam that rises from the earth like something from a horror film. The town became uninhabitable. Residents suffered from gas poisoning. Sinkholes opened as mines collapsed. The ground became unstable and dangerous. By 2002, most residents had been relocated and Centralia's zip code was officially revoked. The state used eminent domain to claim most properties, condemning the town, essentially declaring it a place that should no longer exist. Today, only a handful of residents remain, holdouts who refuse to leave, living in their homes despite the fire burning beneath them, despite the health risks, despite the official non-existence of their town. Driving through Centralia now, you see smoke rising from cracks in old roads, wisps and plumes of vapor that mark where the fire is active. Route 61, which once ran through the town, is closed. the pavement buckled and cracked by the heat beneath, covered in graffiti by visitors who come to see this strange place. The few houses that remain are surrounded by emptiness, by vacant lots where neighbors' houses once stood, by streets that lead nowhere, that end abruptly at the forest edge. The fire is expected to burn for another 250 years or more, consuming the remaining coal seams, slowly working its way through the underground deposits. Centralia will remain a ghost town. For centuries, a place defined not by what's visible, but by what's hidden, burning silently in darkness beneath the surface. Spinalonga, Greece, is a small island off the coast of Crete, dominated by massive Venetian fortifications. For centuries, it served military purposes, a fortress protecting Crete's northern coast, changing hands between Venetians, Ottomans, and Greeks. Then, in 1903, it was designated as a leper colony, a place to isolate people suffering from Hansen's disease. Leprosy patients from across Crete were sent to Spinalonga, forced to live within the fortress walls, separated from the healthy population, provided with basic necessities, but essentially imprisoned by their disease. The colony grew to hundreds of residents who created a community despite the circumstances, opening shops, building homes, marrying, having children, living as normal a life as possible while carrying the stigma and suffering of their disease. The colony closed in 1957 after the development of effective treatments made isolation unnecessary. Spinalonga was abandoned, its residents relocated to the mainland for medical care, its buildings left empty. Today, the island is a tourist destination, reachable by boat from Crete, its fortifications and stone buildings remarkably preserved, telling the story of this unique community. The island is surrounded by calm, turquoise Mediterranean water, creating a beautiful setting for a sad history. The stone fortifications are massive, built by Venetian engineers, designed to withstand siege and bombardment. Walking through the colony's remains, you see narrow streets, small houses, a church, a hospital, the infrastructure of a complete community compressed into a small space within fortress walls. The silence on Spinalonga is complete, except for the sound of waves against the rocky shore, a gentle lapping that provides a constant background rhythm. The Mediterranean sun is bright, creating hard shadows, making the stone glow with warmth. The beauty of the setting contrasts with the sadness of the history, creating a complex emotional landscape. This beautiful island was a place of exile, of suffering, of people making lives under impossible circumstances. Pyramiden, Svalbard, is a Russian mining town in the Arctic, established in the 1920s and abandoned in 1998 when the coal mining operations became unprofitable. The town is remarkably well preserved because of the Arctic climate. The cold essentially freezes everything in place, preventing decay, keeping buildings and objects in near-perfect condition despite decades of abandonment. Pyramiden was built as a model Soviet settlement, designed to showcase communist ideals even in the harsh Arctic environment. The town had everything: apartment buildings, a cultural center with a grand piano, a swimming pool, the world's northernmost, a school, a library, murals depicting socialist ideals, a statue of Lenin, which still stands, the world's northernmost Lenin statue. The cold has preserved everything with eerie completeness. The grand piano in the cultural center is still there, still perfectly in tune, because the cold and dry air prevented the wood and strings from warping or corroding. Books remain on library shelves, their pages crisp. Murals are unfaded. Furniture sits exactly where it was left, as if residents might return at any moment. In Pyramiden, the sun doesn't set for 4 months during the Arctic summer, creating a phenomenon called the midnight sun. The sun circles the horizon without dipping below it, creating endless golden hour light. That perfect warm glow photographers love, but sustained for weeks. The abandoned town is bathed in this perpetual soft light, creating surreal beauty, making the decay and abandonment look almost romantic, almost like a carefully lit stage set rather than genuine ruins. The sound in Pyramiden is minimal, wind occasionally gusting down from the mountains. The distant sound of glaciers carving in the fjord, the calls of Arctic birds. Human sounds are absent. The machinery is silent. The voice is gone. The town holding its breath in the cold, waiting in the endless Arctic light. Varosha, Cyprus, was a luxury beach resort in the 1970s, often called the Riviera of Cyprus, with modern high-rise hotels, restaurants, shops, and beaches that attracted tourists from across Europe. Then came the Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974. The city's Greek Cypriot residents fled as Turkish forces approached, expecting to return once the conflict was resolved. But Varosha was fenced off by the Turkish military, declared a restricted military zone, and has remained off-limits ever since. For nearly 50 years, the resort has sat empty, frozen in 1974, its buildings slowly decaying, its beaches untouched, its streets empty. The high-rise hotels still stand, their facades crumbling, their windows broken, their interiors deteriorating. Curtains that were left behind still hang in windows, moving in the sea breeze, creating ghostly movement in the empty buildings. The streets are cracked and overgrown. Cars from the 1970s sit rusted where they were parked. Shop signs advertise products no longer made. The Mediterranean location means decay happens faster here than in drier or colder abandoned places. Salt air corrodes metal rapidly. Moisture encourages mold and rot. The buildings are deteriorating noticeably, their concrete facades stained with rust streaks from rebar, their structures weakening as steel reinforcement corrodes and expands, cracking the concrete that contains it. Recently, Turkey has begun allowing limited access to parts of Varosha, but most of the resort remains fenced and forbidden, a ghost city visible from the still functioning Greek Cypriot areas of Famagusta, a daily reminder of the frozen conflict, of displacement, of homes that residents can see but cannot return to. Oradour-sur-Glane in France was the site of a massacre during World War II. On June 10, 1944, an SS unit surrounded the village, rounded up all residents, and systematically murdered 642 people, men shot in barns, women and children locked in the church, which was then set on fire. The village was burned, destroyed, left as a smoldering ruin. After the war, French President Charles de Gaulle ordered that the village be left exactly as it was, as a memorial to Nazi brutality, as a permanent reminder of what happened. New Oradour was built nearby, but the original village remains untouched, preserved in its destroyed state, a national memorial and cemetery. Walking through Oradour-sur-Glane today is profoundly moving. The ruins remain, stone walls of houses, the burned-out church, the rusted shells of 1940s cars still sitting on cobblestone streets. Personal items remain where they fell. Sewing machines, Bicycles, signs from shops, all rusted and weathered by 80 years of exposure, but still recognizable, still testifying to the ordinary lives that were interrupted. The silence in Oradour is heavy, weighted with memory and grief. This isn't the peaceful silence of time and decay, but something darker, the silence of tragedy, of lives cut short, of violence and loss. The French government maintains the site meticulously, preserving the ruins, preventing nature from reclaiming what stands as memorial, ensuring the village remains as witness. Fordlândia was Henry Ford's attempt to create a model American town in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. In the 1920s, Ford bought land in Brazil to grow rubber for his car tires, and he built a complete American-style town. Neat houses with white picket fences, a power plant, a hospital, a golf course, everything transported from the United States and reassembled in the jungle. The project was a disaster. The rubber trees suffered from disease. The Amazonian environment was completely different from anything Ford understood. And the Brazilian workers resented the American management style and cultural expectations. By the 1940s, the project was abandoned and the jungle began reclaiming everything. Today, Fordlândia is half swallowed by the rainforest. The American-style houses are overtaken by vines and trees growing through their foundations. The power plant is a concrete shell filled with the sounds of the Amazon. Birds calling, insects buzzing, rain pattering on leaves, the constant drip and rustle of a tropical forest that never stops growing, never stops reclaiming. The jungle is relentless in its reclamation. In the Amazon's heat and humidity, decay happens quickly. Wood rots, metal rusts, concrete crumbles. Plants grow at astonishing speeds, pushing through any crack, any weakness. Within decades, the jungle can erase most evidence of human presence, can reduce buildings to mysterious mounds covered in vegetation, can make cities disappear. Great Blasket Island off the coast of Ireland was inhabited for centuries, a harsh but sustainable life for families who fished, farmed and maintained Gaelic traditions. The island's population peaked at about 175 in the 1910s, but life there was difficult, isolated, exposed to Atlantic storms, lacking modern amenities. The population declined steadily as younger people left for easier lives on the mainland or emigrated to America. By the 1950s, only a handful of elderly residents remained, and the Irish government decided evacuation was necessary for their safety. In 1953, the last residents were moved to the mainland, and Great Blasket Island was abandoned. The stone cottages remain, their roofs collapsed, their walls slowly crumbling in the Atlantic wind and rain. The island is now inhabited primarily by grey seals, which haul out on the beaches, sleep in the cottages' ruins, and raise their pups in what were once human homes. The seals have completely taken over, making the abandoned village their own, sleeping where people once slept, basking in doorways, utterly indifferent to the human history surrounding them. The island is accessible by boat in good weather, and visitors can walk among the ruins, can see the village layout, can imagine the life that was lived here for generations. The Atlantic crashes against the rocky shore, the wind blows constantly, and the seals watch the visitors with large, curious eyes. These new residents completely at home in the abandoned human settlement. Garnet, Montana, is a hidden ghost town accessible only by dirt road, snowmobile, or skis depending on the season. This gold mining town thrived briefly in the 1890s, with about 1,000 residents at its peak, then declined as the gold ran out. By the 1940s, Garnet was completely abandoned. The town is remarkably well preserved, maintained by the Bureau of Land Management and volunteer groups. The buildings are stabilized, kept from collapsing, but kept authentic, not restored to pristine condition. Walking through Garnet, you see a complete small western town. Houses, a hotel, a saloon, a general store, all furnished with period items, all quiet and empty. In winter, reaching Garnet requires crossing miles of forest on skis or snowmobile, traveling through deep snow and silent white woods. The effort required to reach the town adds to its atmosphere. You're truly isolated, truly in wilderness, visiting a place that time forgot, a place that exists in suspension between past and future, preserved but not living, maintained but not inhabited. The silence in Garnet is profound, especially in winter when snow muffles all sound. You can hear your own breathing, your heartbeat, the creak of wood in the cold, but nothing else. The town sits in its mountain valley, perfectly quiet, perfectly preserved, waiting patiently for visitors who come occasionally but never stay. As night falls on these abandoned places, on Pripyat and Hashima, on Bodhi and Kolmanskop, on Krakow and Centralia and all the others, a peculiar feeling emerges. These cities feel liminal, caught between states, neither fully alive nor fully dead. They feel like they're waiting, like they expect people to return even though they never will. This liminal quality creates a strange emotional effect. The cities are obviously abandoned, obviously empty, but they still feel somehow inhabited, still feel like places where human presence lingers, where the echoes of past lives remain audible if you listen carefully. It's not quite ghost stories or supernatural feeling, but something more subtle, the sense that these places remember, that they hold the imprints of the people who lived in them, that abandonment hasn't erased meaning, but has transformed it into something elegiac and strange. Let these abandoned places rest in your thoughts. Pripyat's creaking Ferris wheel and silent pianos, Hashima's concrete corridors with ocean spray, Bodhi frozen in arrested decay with dust-covered plates, Kolmanskop's rooms filled with sand creating library silence, Krakow's medieval arches overlooking empty valleys, Kayakoy's roofless houses cascading down mountainsides, Villaggio ANI hidden behind curtains of pine, Centralia's underground fire burning for 250 more years, Spinalonga's fortress surrounded by turquoise water, Pyramiden's perfectly tuned piano in endless golden light, Varosha's curtains still flapping in the sea breeze, Oradour sur Glane preserved as memorial, Fordlândia swallowed by the Amazon, Great Blasket Island where seals sleep in human cottages, Garnet accessible only through silent white forest, and that liminal feeling, the sense these places are simply waiting, even though waiting is all they'll ever do. This is nature's patient reclamation, the way Earth transforms what we abandon, the silence that fills spaces once loud with human life. Rest here in these empty streets, these roofless houses, these forests reclaiming cities. Feel the peace of places where time has paused, where urgency is gone, where only wind and waves and slowly growing trees mark the passage of years. These are the cities reclaimed by nature, and in their silence there is strange beauty, gentle melancholy, and the peaceful knowledge that Earth endures, that nature persists, that what we build returns eventually to the world we built it from. We descend now from the abandoned cities on land into deeper mysteries, into the realm beneath the waves, where sunken streets lie quiet under 4 meters of water, where ancient shipwrecks rest in oxygen-free darkness, perfectly preserved, where entire cities sleep on the ocean floor, covered in coral and seaweed, waiting in blue-green twilight for divers who visit but never stay. Let us drift together into these underwater graves and sunken secrets, into places where the weight of water creates profound silence, where pressure muffles all sound, where the only movement is the slow sway of seaweed and the gentle drift of silver fish through doorways that once held doors, through windows that once held glass, through streets where people walked thousands of years ago before the sea claimed everything. Imagine the quiet of the deep, not the silence of space, which is absent, but the muffled quiet of water, which absorbs sound, which cushions and softens, which creates a blue-green twilight where visibility fades to mystery. Imagine swimming over ancient streets, seeing the layout of a Bronze Age town preserved because it sank before humans could rebuild over it, seeing pocket watches stopped at the exact moment disaster struck, seeing statues standing sentinel on the seafloor, covered in algae, surrounded by fish, guarding cities where no one lives. Tonight we explore Pavlopetri and Port Royal, Thonis Herakleon and the lion city of Shicheng, the Titanic in her monumental solitude, and the ghost fleet of Chuk Lagoon. We discover cities mentioned in ancient epics, now confirmed by underwater archaeology. Roman villas where you can snorkel over emperors' mosaic floors, and the question of whether massive stone platforms were carved by human hands or shaped by the ocean itself. So let your body relax completely. Feel yourself sinking into comfort, like sinking slowly through water, and join me in descending to these sunken places, these underwater monuments, these graves beneath the waves where time moves differently and silence has weight and depth. Pavlopetri, Greece, lies just 4 meters beneath the surface of the Mediterranean, close enough to shore that you can swim to it, shallow enough that sunlight penetrates clearly, revealing something extraordinary, the oldest submerged city in the world, a complete Bronze Age town that has rested underwater for over 5,000 years. The city is remarkably intact. You can see streets laid out in a grid, rectangular buildings with clear doorways and room divisions, courtyards where families once gathered, tombs where the dead were buried. The layout is perfectly preserved, frozen at the moment the city sank. Whether gradually due to land subsidence or suddenly from an earthquake, we're not entirely certain. What makes Pavlopetri particularly valuable archaeologically is that it was submerged so long ago, long before modern construction, long before later civilizations could build over it, scavenge its stones, or repurpose its materials. On land, ancient cities are almost always buried under layers of later occupation. Troy has 9 layers of cities, built one atop another. Rome is built over ancient Rome. Modern cities cover ancient ones everywhere. But Pavlopetri sank and was preserved by the sea, untouched by later building, its streets and structures remaining exactly where they were when the city was abandoned or destroyed. Swimming over Pavlopetri, you're seeing an urban layout from 5,000 years ago, getting a glimpse of how Bronze Age people organized their communities, how they structured their lives, where they lived and worked and worshipped. The stone foundations create a map on the seafloor, darker lines against the lighter sand, geometric patterns that are clearly artificial, clearly purposeful. Fish swim through doorways. Seaweed grows in what were once rooms. The Mediterranean water is clear, the light soft and filtered, creating a blue-green glow that makes the ancient city look dreamlike, ethereal, like something from memory or imagination rather than solid stone reality. Port Royal, Jamaica, earned its reputation as the wickedest city on earth in the late 1600s. It was a haven for pirates, a place where Henry Morgan and other famous buccaneers spent their plunder, where the taverns never closed and the morality was flexible at best. The city was wealthy, bustling, filled with vice and commerce in equal measure. Then came June 7th, 1692. An earthquake struck at 11:43 a.m. and the ground beneath Port Royal, built on loose sand and gravel, liquefied. 2/3 of the city simply slid into the harbor, buildings collapsing, streets dropping beneath the waves, taking 2,000 people with it in minutes. The survivors called it divine judgment, God's punishment for the city's wickedness. Today, Port Royal sits beneath the harbor waters, a submerged time capsule of 17th century Caribbean life. The brick buildings are buried in silt, their contents scattered but preserved by the anaerobic conditions. Archaeologists have recovered extraordinary artifacts, pocket watches stopped at the exact moment of the disaster, showing 11:43, frozen in time, marking the precise instant the city died. They've found bottles still sealed, their contents preserved, clay pipes, some still containing tobacco, pewter plates and utensils, clothing preserved by the silt, even organic materials like wood and leather, which normally decay quickly, survived in the oxygen-poor sediment. Port Royal is a catacomb, a buried city, a monument to sudden disaster and the fragility of human settlements built on unstable ground. The Antikythera shipwreck, discovered by sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1900, contained many remarkable artifacts, bronze statues, jewelry, fine glassware, evidence of a wealthy Roman ship that sank around 70-60 BCE. But the most astonishing discovery wasn't recognized immediately. Among the corroded bronze fragments was a mechanism so complex, so sophisticated, that it baffled researchers for decades. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, is an ancient analog computer used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance, to track the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, to calculate the timing of the Olympic Games. It consists of at least 30 bronze gears arranged in a wooden case, with inscriptions explaining its operation, with dials and pointers showing various astronomical cycles. The mechanism was so advanced that nothing of comparable complexity appears in the historical record for another 1,500 years. Medieval European clockwork doesn't match its sophistication. Only in the Renaissance do we see mechanical devices approaching its technical achievement. The Greeks of 2,000 years ago possessed mechanical knowledge that we thought hadn't been developed until much later, and this single surviving device proves it. The mechanism sat on the ocean floor for 2,000 years before being recovered, corroded by seawater into a mass of fused gears and fragments. Modern X-ray imaging and careful analysis have revealed its internal structure, how the gears meshed, how the mechanism functioned. But many details remain unknown. We don't fully understand all its capabilities. Don't know if other similar devices existed. Don't know whether this represents common knowledge or a unique creation by a single brilliant craftsman. Thonis Herakleion was a major Egyptian port city mentioned in ancient texts, known to have been important in the late period of Egyptian history, around 600–400 BCE. But its location was lost. The city vanished, mentioned in historical records but impossible to find. For 200 years, Thonis Herakleion was a mystery, a city whose existence was attested but whose location was unknown. Then in 2000, underwater archaeologist Frank Goddio discovered the city in Abu Kirbe near Alexandria, submerged under about 38 feet of water, buried under centuries of sediment. The city had sunk gradually, probably due to soil liquefaction and rising sea levels, eventually disappearing completely beneath the Mediterranean. The discoveries were stunning. Massive stone statues, some 16 feet tall, were found standing upright on the seafloor, still in their original positions despite centuries underwater. These statues, representations of pharaohs and queens, of Egyptian gods, stand like silent sentinels, their stone forms covered in marine growth, surrounded by schools of silver fish that dart through the ancient city, by seaweed that sways in the current like ceremonial banners. The city's layout is being gradually revealed through ongoing excavations, stone temples with massive blocks, harbor facilities, residential areas, coins and jewelry and everyday objects, a complete ancient city, preserved by submersion, protected from the looters and developers that destroyed so many land-based archaeological sites. Swimming through Thonis Herakleion is like being in an aquarium version of an Egyptian museum, massive statues emerging from the sand, their features still sharp, their hieroglyphics still readable, surrounded not by museum crowds, but by fish and crabs and the filtered blue light of shallow water. The city is quiet. The only sounds the breathing of divers and the distant rumble of boat engines on the surface. Everything muffled by water, everything soft and dreamlike. The Great Blue Hole in Belize is a giant marine sinkhole, 300 meters across and 125 meters deep, a perfect circle of dark blue water in the shallow turquoise of the Caribbean reef. The hole is famous among divers as one of the world's most spectacular dive sites, but it's also scientifically important for what it reveals about Earth's past. Inside the blue hole, at depths where recreational divers rarely venture, are massive underwater stalactites, limestone formations that hang from what were once cave ceilings. Stalactites can only form in air through the slow drip of mineral-rich water over thousands of years. Their presence proves that the blue hole was once a dry cave, that sea level was much lower, that what is now deep underwater was once a cavern above the ocean's surface. This happened during the last ice age, when massive glaciers locked up so much water that sea levels worldwide were 100 to 120 meters lower than today. The Belize coast extended much farther out, and what is now the Blue Hole was a cave system in a coastal limestone plateau. When the ice melted and seas rose, the cave was flooded, becoming the underwater wonder we see today, its stalactites preserved in the deep, silent testimony to climate change and the ocean's changing levels. The Black Sea has unusual chemistry. Below about 200 meters depth, the water is anoxic, containing no oxygen. This oxygen-free zone is maintained by the sea's unique stratification, with lighter, fresher water floating atop. Denser, saltier water preventing mixing that would bring oxygen to the depths. This anoxic environment has extraordinary preservation properties. Wood doesn't rot without oxygen. The bacteria and fungi that decompose wood require oxygen to function. In the Black Sea's deep waters, shipwrecks are preserved in remarkable condition, their wooden hulls intact, their masts still standing, their ropes still coiled on deck. Archaeologists have found Roman-era and Byzantine ships sitting on the Black Sea floor, looking exactly as they did the day they sank 2,000 years ago. The wood is sound, not even waterlogged in the normal sense. The ships are ghost ships, preserved in a cold, dark, oxygen-free embrace, waiting in the deep where no decay can touch them. One ship was found with the mast still standing, the rigging still attached, even the rudder still in place. A complete sailing vessel from the ancient world, preserved so perfectly it looks like it could sail again if raised to the surface. These ships are time capsules offering unprecedented insight into ancient shipbuilding, into how these vessels were constructed and sailed, preserving details that would be lost in any other marine environment. Xicheng, known as the Lion City, was a Chinese city dating to the Eastern Han Dynasty around 200 CE. It was a regional center built at the foot of the Five Lion Mountain with elaborate stone architecture, gates carved with lions, dragons adorning important buildings, temples and administrative centers, homes and shops, a complete city from imperial China. In 1959, the Chinese government decided to build a hydroelectric dam and created an artificial lake, Qiandao Lake, the Thousand Island Lake. Xicheng was in the flooding zone. The residents were relocated, and the city was deliberately submerged, sacrificed to provide power and water storage. For decades, Xicheng was forgotten, just another city beneath one of China's many reservoirs. Then in 2001, the government organized diving expeditions to survey what remained. What they found was astonishing. The city was almost perfectly preserved, protected by 130 feet of fresh water from the erosion of wind and sun, from the destructive effects of weather. The stone carvings, lions and dragons, inscriptions and decorative details are sharper now than they were 60 years ago, clearer than they would be if the city had remained on land. Surface weathering has stopped. The details are frozen. The city is a submerged museum, its stone architecture preserved by the lake, accessible only to divers who descend into the green-lit depths to swim through streets and alleys, through buildings and gates, through a drowned city from ancient China. The water in the lake is murky compared to the ocean. Visibility is limited. The light is filtered and dim, but this actually enhances the atmosphere, making the sudden appearance of carved dragons or lion-decorated gates even more dramatic, like ghosts, materializing from the gloom. The Titanic lies 12,500 feet down in the North Atlantic, 2 miles beneath the surface, far deeper than sunlight penetrates, in water that is near freezing and under pressure of over 5,000 pounds per square inch. This is the abyssal zone, a realm of permanent darkness, extreme pressure, and near zero temperature. At this depth, most life cannot survive. There are no fish swimming through the Titanic's corridors, no coral growing on her decks. The ship sits in what deep-sea explorers describe as monumental solitude, surrounded by darkness, by cold, by silence so profound it seems to have weight. The only sounds are mechanical, the creak and groan of steel under pressure. The submarine sounds changing over decades as the ship slowly collapses, as decay continues even in these hostile conditions. Metal-eating bacteria consume the iron, creating rusticles, rust formations that look like icicles, that hang from railings and portals, that gradually dissolve the ship's structure. Visiting the Titanic requires submersibles capable of withstanding the pressure, equipped with lights to pierce the eternal darkness. The submarine descends for hours, sinking through the water column, through layers of increasing pressure and darkness, finally reaching the bottom where the ship lies in two pieces. Her bow and stern separated, her middle section collapsed into a debris field. The ship is recognizable but deteriorating. The famous bow with its railings is still there, though covered in rust. The grand staircase has collapsed. The wooden decks have been eaten away, but the basic structure remains. You can see the outline of the ship, can identify features from photographs, can match what you're seeing to the ship's known layout. The solitude is profound. You're at the bottom of the ocean, surrounded by crushing pressure and absolute darkness, except for the submersible's lights. The ship is a monument to disaster, to hubris, to the 500 people who died when it sank. The silence and isolation make it a tomb, a sacred place deserving of respect and reverence. Chuuk Lagoon in Micronesia is one of the world's most remarkable dive sites. A ghost fleet of over 50 Japanese ships and hundreds of aircraft sunk during Operation Hailstone in 1944, when American forces attacked the Japanese fleet base, sending warships, cargo vessels, and planes to the bottom of the lagoon. The lagoon is shallow and warm, and in the decades since the battle, coral has colonized the wrecks. The ships are now covered in a soft, colorful blanket of coral, hard corals forming structures, soft corals waving in the current, fish sheltering in the wrecks, eels living in gun barrels, schools of tropical fish swimming through cargo holds. The wrecks are time capsules of war. Tanks and trucks sit in cargo holds, still secured for transport. Weapons lie on decks. Sake bottles remain in officers' quarters. Some wrecks still contain human remains. The sailors and officers who went down with their ships, now resting in their steel tombs, becoming part of the reef. Diving Chuuk is beautiful and eerie simultaneously. The coral creates gorgeous colors and attracts abundant marine life, making the dives visually spectacular. But the context is sobering. These are war graves, sites of sudden death, vessels that sank in battle with their crews still aboard. The beauty of the coral contrasts with the tragedy of the wrecks, creating a complex emotional experience. The lagoon is peaceful now, the violence of the battle long past, the ships transformed into artificial reefs, supporting life rather than dealing death. The ghost fleet rests quietly in warm water, covered in coral, surrounded by fish, an underwater monument to war and to nature's ability to transform even instruments of destruction into habitats for life. Dwarka, India, appears in Hindu scriptures as Lord Krishna's legendary golden city, described in the Mahabharata and other ancient texts as a magnificent port city with impressive architecture, eventually swallowed by the sea after Krishna's death. For millennia, Dwarka was considered mythological, a legendary city like Atlantis, probably fictional. Then in the 1980s and 1990s, marine archaeologists began finding structures underwater off the Gujarat coast. Stone walls, blocks with tool marks, what appeared to be a massive fortification wall running for hundreds of meters, sitting 120 feet underwater. The structures matched descriptions from the ancient texts of a great fortified city. The discovery is controversial. Some archaeologists believe these are natural formations, limestone outcrops shaped by wave action rather than human construction. Others argue the structures are too regular, show too much evidence of tool marks and organized layout to be natural. The debate continues, but the possibility that an ancient city described in Sanskrit epics actually existed, that it's now submerged off the Indian coast, is tantalizing. Diving Dwarka means swimming along massive stone blocks, examining walls that might be fortifications from thousands of years ago, trying to determine whether what you're seeing is the legendary city of Krishna or just interesting geology. The water is murky, visibility limited, making the experience more mysterious. You're feeling your way along stone, using lights to examine surfaces, trying to read history in underwater rock. The Yonaguni monument off the coast of Japan features massive stone platforms with right angles, flat surfaces, and step-like formations that look remarkably artificial, like a pyramid or temple complex carved from solid rock. The monument sits in water shallow enough for recreational diving, making it accessible and widely photographed. The controversy around Yonaguni is intense. Some researchers, led by marine geologist Masaki Kimura, argue the structure is man-made, carved when sea levels were lower, during the last ice age, making it perhaps 10,000 years old, far older than any known civilization in the region. They point to the right angles, the apparent staircases, what looks like carved channels and post holes. Other geologists argue the formations are entirely natural, created by the way the local sandstone fractures along regular planes, creating these geometric shapes without any human intervention. They point out that sandstone commonly fractures in rectangular patterns, that the steps could be natural terraces, that no clear evidence of tool marks has been found. The debate remains unresolved. Yonaguni is either a natural geological formation that happens to look artificial, or it's an ancient man-made structure from a previously unknown prehistoric culture, submerged when sea levels rose after the Ice Age. Either way, diving Yonaguni is impressive. The scale is massive. The formations are geometric and striking, whether carved by humans or shaped by geology and ocean currents over millennia. Baia, Italy, was the Las Vegas and Riviera of ancient Rome, a resort town where wealthy Romans built lavish villas, where emperors maintained pleasure palaces, where luxury and excess were the norm. The town was built on the volcanic Phlegraean Fields, an area of ongoing geologic activity, and over centuries, the coastline subsided, sinking gradually into the Tyrrhenian Sea. Today, you can snorkel in just a few meters of water over the ruins of Baia, swimming above mosaic floors that once decorated imperial villas, past marble columns that supported grand porticos, around statues that stood in gardens where Rome's elite strolled. The water is clear, the Mediterranean sun bright, making the ruins visible and striking. The statues are particularly haunting. They're covered in a fine layer of white algae and marine growth, giving them a ghostly appearance, making them look like spirits emerging from the sand, like the shades of ancient Romans still inhabiting their pleasure gardens beneath the waves. You swim past them, these stone faces from 2,000 years ago, covered in life but still recognizable, still beautiful, still conveying the artistry and wealth of imperial Rome. The mosaic floors are remarkably preserved, the tiny colored tiles still in place, the patterns still clear, geometric designs and figures recognizable despite centuries underwater. You float above them, looking down at floors where Roman feet once walked, where parties were held, where the powerful and wealthy lived lives of luxury we can barely imagine. Baia is magical for its accessibility. This isn't a deep, difficult dive requiring special equipment. It's snorkeling depth, warm water, clear visibility, sunlight penetrating to illuminate the ruins. You can spend hours swimming through the submerged city, discovering new details, new statues, new mosaics, feeling connected across 2,000 years to the people who built and lived in these now submerged villas. The Vasa was a Swedish warship built in the 1620s as a symbol of Swedish military power, elaborately decorated with hundreds of carved sculptures painted in bright colors, designed to be the most impressive warship of its era. She was top-heavy, over-decorated, and fundamentally unstable, a ship built more for show than for seaworthiness. On August 10, 1628, the Vasa set sail on her maiden voyage from Stockholm harbour. She sailed less than a mile before a gust of wind heeled her over. Water poured through the open gun ports, and the ship sank in just 32 meters of water, taking 30 crew members with her. For 333 years, the Vasa sat on the harbour bottom, preserved by the brackish water of Stockholm harbour, salty enough to prevent wood-boring organisms from thriving, but not salty enough for shipworms that normally destroy wooden wrecks. In 1961, after years of preparation, the ship was raised intact, the most complete 17th century ship ever recovered. The preservation was extraordinary. The wood still smelled of pine and tar when the ship broke the surface. The sculptures were intact, hundreds of them covering the stern and sides. Personal effects of the crew were found aboard: clothing, tools, games, food, ordinary objects preserved by the cold, brackish water and the mud that covered the lower parts of the ship. The Vasa now sits in a climate-controlled museum in Stockholm, the most visited museum in Scandinavia, an incredible time capsule of 17th century shipbuilding, of Swedish history, of the moment when ambition exceeded capability and the result was disaster and, paradoxically, perfect preservation. Lake Michigan contains something mysterious. A stone structure discovered in 2007 by researchers using sonar, about 40 feet underwater. The structure consists of stones arranged in a circle, about 40 feet in diameter, with one stone appearing to show a carving of a mastodon, an extinct elephant-like creature that disappeared from North America about 10,000 years ago. If the carving is genuine, and the structure is man-made, it would date to the end of the last ice age, when Lake Michigan's water levels were much lower and this area was dry land. It would represent one of the oldest known structures in North America, created by Paleo-Indian peoples we know little about. However, the findings haven't been published in peer-reviewed journals, and many archaeologists are skeptical. The carving might be natural weathering or pareidolia, seeing patterns in random features. The stone circle might be a natural formation. Without thorough study, which is difficult given the underwater location, the Lake Michigan structure remains intriguing but unproven. Dunwich, England, was once one of England's most important ports, a major trading centre and fishing town on the Suffolk coast. But the North Sea is relentless, and coastal erosion gradually ate away at Dunwich over centuries. Storms accelerated the process, with major disasters in the 13th and 14th centuries when huge sections of the town were washed away. By the 1700s, most of Dunwich had slipped into the sea. The process continued into the 20th century, with the last church collapsing off the cliff edge in 1919. Today, only a small village remains of what was once a major medieval city, with the rest lying underwater off the coast, gradually buried by sand and sediment. Local legend says that during storms, when the sea is rough and the wind howls, you can hear the church bells of Dunwich ringing beneath the waves, the bells of the 7 or 8 churches that were lost to the sea, still calling the faithful to services in drowned churches where only fish now congregate. It's almost certainly just the sound of waves and wind, of rocks grinding together under the surf, but the legend persists, giving voice to the loss, to the town that was slowly eaten by the sea over centuries. Alexandria, Egypt, was the intellectual capital of the ancient world, home to the famous Library of Alexandria, to the Pharos Lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders, to the Palace of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh who ruled from this cosmopolitan city and died here after the suicide that ended the Ptolemaic dynasty and made Egypt a Roman province. Parts of ancient Alexandria sank due to earthquakes and subsidence, including portions of the royal quarter where Cleopatra lived. Underwater archaeologists have found ruins that are likely from her palace complex. Granite columns, sphinxes, statues, coins and jewelry that haven't seen sunlight in 2,000 years. Artifacts from the life of one of history's most famous queens. Swimming through these ruins means swimming through history, through the physical spaces where Cleopatra walked, where she met Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, where she lived and ruled and eventually died. The jewelry found in the ruins, gold earrings, precious stones, might have belonged to her or her courtiers, might have adorned the bodies of people whose names we know from historical text. The palace ruins are scattered and fragmentary. Earthquakes didn't preserve them as neatly as gradual subsidence preserved other sites, but enough remains to identify locations, to map the ancient shoreline, to understand how the city was laid out. Alexandria continues to reveal its secrets slowly, as underwater archaeologists work year by year to map and study what lies beneath the harbour waters. At these depths, whether it's 4 meters over Pavlopetri or 130 feet down to Shicheng, there's a peculiar feeling, liminal between worlds, suspended in blue-green light, weightless, where time feels stopped and the world above feels forgotten. The water muffles everything, absorbs sound, creates silence that has physical presence, that presses around you like the water itself. Moving through these underwater places is dreamlike. You're flying rather than walking, drifting rather than striding, suspended in a medium that supports your weight, that allows you to hover above ancient streets, to peer into ancient doorways, to swim where people once walked, to exist in spaces that were designed for air breathers but are now the domain of fish and divers. The light underwater is different, filtered, diffused, often tinted blue or green, creating a twilight atmosphere even at midday. Shadows are softer, colors are muted. Everything has a quality like old photographs, like memories, like dreams. The ruins emerge from the gloom gradually, details revealing themselves as you get closer, creating constant discovery, constant surprise. Let these sunken secrets rest in your thoughts. Pavla Petri's 5,000-year-old streets, 4 meters down. Port Royal sliding into the sea with pocket watches, stopped at 11:43. The Antikythera mechanism, ancient computer lost for 2,000 years. Thonis Heracleon's 16-foot statues, standing sentinel among silver fish. The great blue holes, stalactites, proving the ocean was once much lower. Black Sea ghost ships perfectly preserved in oxygen-free darkness. Shicheng's stone carvings sharper now than 60 years ago. The Titanic in monumental solitude 2 miles down. Chuk Lagoon's ghost fleet covered in colorful coral. Dwaka's massive walls matching ancient texts. Yonaguni's stepped platforms, natural or carved. Baya's mosaic floors where Roman emperors walked. The Vasa still smelling of pine and tar after 333 years. Lake Michigan's stone circle with a mastodon carving. Dunwich's church bells supposedly ringing beneath the waves. Cleopatra's palace scattered with jewelry, seeing sunlight again after 2 millennia. And that liminal feeling of weightlessness, of time stopped, of the world above forgotten in the heavy quiet of the deep. This is the silence of the ocean floor, the weight of water creating natural quiet, the blue-green twilight where ancient cities sleep and shipwrecks rest, and the only citizens are fish and coral and the occasional diver passing through. Rest here in these underwater graves, in these sunken secrets, in the muffled peace that comes from being beneath the waves, where the pressure of the deep creates a silence so complete it feels like the ocean itself is holding its breath, waiting, remembering, keeping these secrets safe in the quiet dark beneath the light. We move now from the underwater depths to different depths, the depths of abandoned interiors, the thick air of empty halls, the profound silence of grand structures built for crowds that never returned. These are the places that feel most liminal, most suspended between past and future, spaces designed for noise and movement that now hold only dust and stillness, where your footsteps echo through vast emptiness and you can hear your own heartbeat in the quiet. Let us walk together through these empty halls and grand interiors, through abandoned mansions with rotting velvet curtains and hospitals with paint peeling like autumn leaves, through shopping malls where koi fish swim beneath rusted escalators and railway stations where a single raindrop echoes through 18 stories. Let us discover castles held together by trees growing through their walls and churches where collapsed roofs create divine beams of light on crumbling pews. Imagine the feeling of these indoor spaces, not the clean emptiness of new construction, but the heavy stillness of long abandonment, where dust coats every surface in thick layers, where air feels stagnant and old, where silence has accumulated like the dust, building up over decades until it becomes almost tangible, almost visible, a presence that presses against you as you walk through rooms that haven't heard voices in years. Tonight we'll explore Bannerman Castle on its Hudson River Island and Halcyon Hall, with its hundreds of silent rooms, Belitz Heilstätten's sun-drenched corridors, and the shopping mall that became an indoor koi pond, Michigan Central Station's perfect acoustics, and Miranda Castle surrendering to damp forest air. We'll visit the resort that inspired Dirty Dancing, the theater in dark storage, the love hotels frozen in neon decay, and the church where sunlight falls on stone like divine intervention through the collapsed roof. So settle deeper into rest, let your breathing slow, and drift with me into These abandoned interiors, these empty halls, these grand spaces waiting in silence, holding their breath, feeling the weight of the past. Bannerman Castle sits on Polypel Island in the Hudson River, a small rocky island between New York City and Albany, visible from the Metro North trains that run along the eastern shore. The castle looks medieval, like it was transported from Scotland and dropped onto this American river island, with towers and crenellations and thick stone walls rising dramatically from the rocks. But the castle was built in the early 1900s by Francis Bannerman VI, an arms dealer who purchased military surplus, weapons, ammunition, uniforms, equipment, and needed a place to store his vast inventory away from New York City's population centers. He built this castle as a warehouse and advertisement, a structure so distinctive that passing river traffic and trains couldn't miss it, ensuring everyone knew Bannerman's name and business. Bannerman stocked the castle with weapons from multiple wars, Civil War muskets, Spanish-American war cannons, even some equipment from the Revolutionary War. The castle was part storage, part showroom, part eccentric millionaire's fantasy. Then in 1920, an explosion in one of the powder magazines partially destroyed the complex. The family continued using it until the 1950s, then abandoned it. Today, Bannerman Castle is a skeletal landmark, its empty shell visible from passing trains, a romantic ruin on the Hudson. The walls still stand, massive, impressive, fake medieval, but the interiors are gone, destroyed by the explosion, by decades of exposure, by fires that swept through the abandoned complex. What remains is pure facade, a stone shell, windows looking onto nothing, towers standing but hollow. The island is closed to the public except for occasional guided tours, but you can see the castle clearly from the train or from river tour boats. It looks like something from a Gothic novel, like a castle from a fairy tale, except American and commercial rather than European and royal. A monument to capitalism dressed in medieval costume, now surrendering slowly to time and weather. Halcyon Hall in New York was extraordinary in its decay, a massive Second Empire-style building, originally built as a luxury hotel in the 1890s, later becoming Bennett College, a women's school. The college closed in 1978, and the building sat abandoned for decades, slowly deteriorating into one of the Northeast's most photographed ruins. Before its demolition in 2014, Halcyon Hall was a cathedral of decay, hundreds of rooms filled with debris, rotting velvet curtains still hanging at tall windows, their fabric disintegrating but still recognizable. Silent pianos covered in thick dust, their ivory keys yellowed, their strings still capable of sound if struck, but unstruck for decades. Layers of wallpaper peeling from walls, revealing older wallpaper beneath. Archaeology of decoration visible in, see her cross-section. The building had a particular grandeur even in ruin. Tall ceilings, ornate moldings, chandeliers hanging askew or fallen completely. Grand staircases with carved banisters. Walking through it felt like walking through a very slow-motion collapse, everything degrading at different rates, some elements stubbornly persisting while others crumbled. The dust was extraordinary, coating everything in layers so thick they muffled footsteps, so deep that disturbing them created clouds that hung in the air for minutes. The dust captured time, recorded abandonment, showed that nothing here had been touched in decades. And through it all, those pianos, at least a dozen scattered through the building, sat silent, waiting for hands that would never return, for music that would never be played. Belitz Heilstätten is a massive hospital complex in Germany, built in the late 1800s as a tuberculosis sanatorium, later used as a military hospital, then a Soviet military hospital. After World War II, finally abandoned after German reunification when the Soviet forces withdrew. The complex consists of about 60 buildings spread across extensive grounds, connected by underground tunnels, surrounded by forest. The buildings feature long corridors with tall windows on both sides, creating beautiful light effects. Sun streams through the windows, illuminating dust motes in the air, creating shafts of light that move across the floors and walls as the day progresses. The paint peels from the walls and ceilings in long strips and curls, and these peeling paint patterns look remarkably like falling autumn leaves, creating an organic appearance in the deteriorating hospital. One of the building's most famous patients was a young Adolf Hitler, wounded in World War I, who convalesced here in 1916. This historical footnote adds strange weight to the abandoned complex. These halls witnessed history's most notorious figure recovering from injury, beginning the path that would lead to such catastrophe. Today, the only residents are plants. Vines grow through glassless windows, climbing walls, covering floors, reclaiming the surgery rooms and wards. Trees sprout from cracks in the floors, growing tall enough to reach sunlight through the windows. The hospital is becoming forest, nature actively transforming medical space into woodland, erasing human purpose with patient, relentless growth. Parts of the complex are open for tours, and an elevated walkway has been built through the trees above the buildings, allowing visitors to look down on the ruins from above. But much remains closed, dangerous, slowly collapsing. The place has a particular atmosphere. The combination of beautiful light, elegant architecture, and creeping decay creates something aesthetically powerful, making Belitz one of Europe's most photographed abandoned sites. Rolling Hills Asylum in New York operated from 1827 to 1974, originally as a poorhouse, later as a hospital for the mentally ill, as an infirmary, serving various institutional purposes over its long history. The building is massive, a 3-story brick structure with long hallways, numerous rooms, and a history of human suffering and institutional care. After closure, the building sat mostly abandoned for years before being partially reopened as a haunted house attraction and paranormal investigation site. But during its emptiest years, the building took on distinctive physical characteristics. The wooden floorboards, exposed to decades of temperature changes and moisture variations without climate control, warped dramatically, creating floors that undulate like waves, that rise and fall, that are no longer flat, but curved and buckled. Walking these hallways means navigating uneven floors, stepping carefully where boards have weakened, avoiding areas where floors have collapsed entirely. The shadow-filled corridors stretch seemingly forever, with doorways opening onto rooms that are dark even in daytime, where light from the hallway penetrates only a few feet before being swallowed by the darkness within. The building has that institutional smell, a mixture of old wood, dust, decay, and something else. Something that might be imagination, or might be the accumulated scent of a century and a half of human occupation, of lives lived in confinement, of suffering and care, and the daily routines of institutional existence. The New World shopping mall in Bangkok opened in 1997 but closed in 1999, a victim of building code violations. The mall sat abandoned for years, its roof gradually failing, sections collapsing, allowing rainwater to accumulate on the ground floor. This created a large, shallow indoor pond where water sat stagnant and mosquitoes bred prolifically, becoming a public health concern. Then someone had an idea. What if they stocked the mall pond with fish? Mosquito fish initially, to control the larvae. But eventually someone introduced koi and catfish, which thrived in this unexpected habitat. The fish population exploded. Thousands of fish began living in the mall, swimming beneath the escalators that would never move again, through the ground floor shops that would never sell anything again, creating an inadvertent aquarium in abandoned commercial space. For years, the only sound in that shopping mall was the rhythmic splashing of fish, their tails breaking the surface, their bodies brushing against partially submerged fixtures, the plop of fish jumping for insects. This sound echoed through the empty mall, through hallways and corridors still filled with signs advertising products, through a space designed for crowds and commerce, now hosting only fish and stagnant water. The fish became a tourist attraction in their own right. People came specifically to see the mall pond, to photograph the surreal sight of koi swimming beneath escalators. Eventually, health authorities drained the mall and removed the fish, citing dengue fever concerns. But for a few years, the New World shopping mall was something unique. A shopping center that had become an ecosystem, commerce transformed into habitat. Pidhirtsi Castle in Ukraine, built in the early 1600s, was called the Versailles of the East, one of the most magnificent palaces in Eastern Europe. The castle featured Italian architects, elaborate decorations, extensive art collections, gold leaf covering surfaces, fine furnishings from across Europe. It was a statement of power and wealth, a fortress palace that combined defensive architecture with residential luxury. The castle had a turbulent history, changing hands multiple times, damaged in various conflicts, used by different regimes for different purposes. During Soviet times, it was converted into a tuberculosis sanatorium with hospital equipment installed in the grand rooms. Then came a catastrophic fire in 1956, which destroyed much of the interior, leaving the stone structure standing but gutted. Today, Pidhirtsi Castle is being slowly restored, but much remains as it was after the fire. Empty stone galleries, walls blackened by smoke, vacant rooms where gold leaf once shone but now only bare stone remains. The acoustics in these empty halls are extraordinary. Every footstep echoes, every sound multiplies, creating a cold, echoing silence that amplifies rather than absorbs sound. Walking through Pidhirtsi means walking through layers of history. You see Renaissance architecture, evidence of Baroque decoration, scars from fires and wars, Soviet-era modifications, the slow work of restoration. It's a palimpsest in stone, multiple eras visible simultaneously, with the emptiness and silence allowing you to focus on these details, to read history in architecture. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia opened in 1829 as a revolutionary prison designed around the concept of solitary confinement and penitence, hence penitentiary. The prison's design was radical, a wagon wheel, layout with cell blocks radiating from a central hub, allowing guards to observe all corridors from a single point. Each prisoner was kept in complete isolation in a cell with a skylight, called the Eye of God, meant to contemplate their crimes and achieve moral reform through solitude. Prisoners wore hoods when outside their cells so they couldn't see or be seen by others. The system was considered progressive but was actually psychologically devastating, and the pure isolation model was eventually abandoned. The wagon wheel architecture creates unique acoustics. Sound travels easily along the long, straight corridors, bouncing off stone walls and vaulted ceilings. Even a whisper in one cell block can carry to other parts of the prison, echoing and re-echoing. Guards used this to their advantage. Prisoners never knew if they were being overheard, creating paranoia and compliance. The prison closed in 1971 and sat abandoned for years before opening as a museum. The decay was arrested before total collapse, preserving the prison in a state of stabilized ruin. Walking through Eastern State now, you experience both its architecture and its deterioration. Cell doors rusted open, paint peeling, ceilings collapsed in places, plants growing through floors, but the overall structure intact, imposing, allowing you to understand the experience of imprisonment here. Mudhouse Mansion in Ohio was a local legend, a Gothic revival house that sat abandoned for years on the outskirts of Lancaster, gaining a reputation as a haunted house, a place where local teens dared each other to approach at night, where every shadow seemed watchful, where the dark windows looked like empty eyes staring out. The mansion's actual history was less dramatic than the legends. Built in the early 1900s, occupied by various families, abandoned in the late 20th century, deteriorating naturally without supernatural intervention. But the building's appearance encouraged supernatural interpretation. Its Gothic architecture with towers and arched windows, its position isolated on overgrown property, the way it loomed against the sky, all contributed to its reputation. The watchful quality people described is a real psychological phenomenon. Buildings with regular window placement create patterns that our brains interpret as faces, 2 windows as eyes, a door as a mouth. This pareidolia is stronger in abandoned buildings where dark windows look like empty eye sockets, where the building seems to observe passers-by with hollow, unblinking attention. The mansion was eventually demolished, but during its abandonment, it embodied a particular type of American Gothic. Not the ancient castles of Europe, but the abandoned mansions of American suburbs, places that failed economically rather than falling to war or plague, that sit empty because their upkeep exceeded their value, that haunt through mundane failure rather than dramatic catastrophe. Michigan Central Station in Detroit opened in 1913 as one of the world's grandest railroad stations, a massive Beaux-Arts building with an 18-story office tower, a waiting room with 3-story tall ceilings, intricate plasterwork, marble floors, enormous arched windows. The station was built during Detroit's boom years when the city was confident, wealthy, growing, when a grand station seemed not just appropriate, but necessary. The station's decline mirrored Detroit's decline. As automobile travel replaced rail travel, as Detroit's population fell and the city struggled economically, train service decreased. The station closed in 1988, left abandoned, becoming a symbol of Detroit's industrial collapse, its urban decay. For 30 years, The massive vaulted waiting room looked down on a completely empty marble floor. The marble was still there, still beautiful despite dirt and damage, but completely unused, serving no purpose. A floor built for thousands of daily passengers, seeing none for decades. The windows were broken, letting in rain and snow and pigeons, but the basic structure remained imposing and sad. The acoustics during abandonment were remarkable. The station was designed with good acoustics for announcements, with high ceilings and hard surfaces that would carry sound. In abandonment, these acoustics became extraordinary. The sound of a single raindrop could be heard throughout the entire building, echoing from the waiting room to the upper floors. A tiny sound amplified by enormous empty space. Birds singing in the rafters created cathedral-like reverb. Recently, Ford Motor Company purchased the station and is renovating it, bringing the building back to use after decades of abandonment. The renovation acknowledges that this building is too important, too impressive to let decay, that Detroit's recovery must include preserving its architectural heritage. But during those 30 years of emptiness, Michigan Central Station was one of America's most powerful symbols of industrial decline, of urban abandonment, of grand visions outliving their purpose. Miranda Castle in Belgium, also called Chateau de Noisy, was a fairy tale estate built in 1866 in neo-Gothic style, with towers and turrets, with elaborate decoration set in forest land. The castle was used as a summer residence, then as an orphanage operated by a Catholic organization, housing children from 1950 to 1980. After the orphanage closed, the castle sat abandoned. The damp forest air penetrated the building, creating ideal conditions for decay. The humidity caused wallpaper to peel, wood to rot, metal to rust. Mold and mildew covered surfaces. The castle's elaborate interior, chandeliers, staircases, wood paneling, decorative plaster, slowly deteriorated in the moisture. Miranda became famous among urban explorers as one of Europe's most beautiful abandoned buildings. Photographers documented its decay, the grand staircase with elegant curves, the chapel with colored light through, stained glass windows, the rooms still containing furniture from the orphanage era. The castle was decaying but remained standing, maintained a kind of tragic beauty in its deterioration. In 2017, the castle was demolished despite protests from preservationists. The owner deemed it unsafe and too expensive to maintain, and the building was razed, leaving only rubble. The demolition was controversial. Many argued the castle could have been saved, that its historical and architectural value warranted the cost. But economic reality prevailed, and one of Belgium's most iconic ruins disappeared. Overbrook Asylum in New Jersey was enormous, at its peak, housing over 2,000 patients, employing hundreds of staff, operating as a complete self-contained community with its own power plant, fire department, bakery, farm, and water supply. The asylum was built on the Kirkbride plan, a specific asylum architecture designed to be therapeutic, with long wings extending from a central administration building with access to light and air, with grounds for walking and gardening. The asylum closed in 2007 after years of decline, scandals about patient care, and shifting approaches to mental health treatment. The massive complex sat abandoned, its dozens of buildings slowly deteriorating. The ovens in the bakery remained cold. The fire trucks sat in garages with flat tires. The hallways, once bustling with staff and patients, grew a carpet of green moss as water damage and humidity created conditions for plant growth indoors. Overbrook became notorious for the discovery of thousands of patient remains in unmarked graves on the grounds, revealing the asylum's dark history of patients dying and being buried without ceremony or proper markers. The discovery brought attention to historical treatment of the mentally ill, to institutions that warehoused rather than treated, that saw patients as less than fully human. The asylum buildings are being demolished gradually, replaced by new development. But during their abandonment, they were powerful monuments to changing attitudes toward mental health, to institutional care's failures, to the people who spent years or decades in these buildings, who lived and died here, whose presence seemed to linger in the empty hallways and silent wards. The Salton Sea in California was created accidentally in 1905 when irrigation canals broke and Colorado River water flowed into a desert basin for 2 years. The resulting lake became a recreational destination in the 1950s and 60s. Beach resorts were built, yacht clubs established, celebrities visited, and the Salton Sea was marketed as California's new Riviera. But the lake has no outlet, and as water evaporates, salt and agricultural chemicals concentrate. The salinity increased until it exceeded ocean water. Fish died in massive numbers. The smell became unbearable, a combination of rotting fish and hydrogen sulfide that made the area almost uninhabitable. Tourism collapsed, the resorts were abandoned, and the Salton Sea became a symbol of ecological and economic disaster. Today, the abandoned trailers and yacht clubs sit in salty, sulfur-scented silence. The buildings are covered in salt deposits from the lake's spray. Boats rot on trailers, their hulls bleached and cracked by sun and salt. The beaches are covered not with sand, but with the crushed bones and scales of millions of dead fish, creating a white crust that crunches underfoot. The smell is distinctive and overwhelming, sulfurous, chemical, organic decay, concentrated sun-baked death. The silence is broken only by wind and by the occasional car on distant highways. Birds still come. The Salton Sea is an important stop on migration routes, but the human presence is gone, leaving only the ruins of misplaced optimism, of resorts built without understanding the ecological consequences. Grossinger's Catskill Resort Hotel was one of the most famous of the Borscht Belt resorts. Large, Jewish-oriented hotels in the Catskill Mountains where New York City residents spent summers, where entertainment was constant, where comedians and musicians got their starts. Grossinger's was the inspiration for the resort in Dirty Dancing, a representation of this particular slice of American leisure culture. The resort closed in 1986, victim of changing vacation patterns, cheaper air travel to more exotic destinations, demographic shifts. The building sat abandoned for decades, slowly deteriorating. The massive indoor swimming pool, once the site of recreation and socializing, became something strange, an indoor garden. The pool tiles cracked, allowing water to seep in from rain infiltration and groundwater, creating damp conditions. Seeds, carried by wind through broken windows, found purchase in the cracks, and grass began growing through the tiles, creating a surreal indoor lawn where swimmers once dove. Other parts of the resort showed similar transformations: ballrooms where ceilings collapsed, dining rooms where tables remained set with decaying linens, lobbies where registration desks sat covered in dust and debris. The resort was like a time capsule of 1980s vacation culture, preserved in deterioration. Much of Grossinger's has now been demolished, but during its abandonment, it represented the end of the Borscht Belt era, the transition from these large communal resorts to different forms of leisure and travel, from a specific cultural moment to its memory preserved in decay. The Orpheum Theatre in New Bedford, Massachusetts, is unusual among abandoned buildings because it's in dark storage, sealed, climate-controlled, deliberately preserved rather than allowed to decay. The theatre closed in 1959 and was purchased by preservationists who maintain it in darkness, keeping the temperature and humidity stable, preventing deterioration while funds are raised for eventual restoration. The theatre's interior is remarkable. Ornate gold carvings covering the proscenium arch and boxes, red velvet seats still intact, chandeliers still hanging, plasterwork still crisp. Everything is covered in dust, and everything sits in complete darkness, except when preservationists enter occasionally to check conditions, to document the space, to ensure the building remains stable. The preservation in darkness is intentional. Light causes fading and deterioration, especially to fabrics and painted surfaces. By keeping the theatre dark, by controlling temperature and humidity, the preservationists have arrested decay, frozen the building in time. The theatre waits in darkness for the day when enough money is raised to restore it, to turn the lights back on, to fill it again with audiences and performances. Walking through the Orpheum with flashlights, you see a complete 1912 vaudeville theatre, unchanged, waiting. The silence is profound. No sounds from outside penetrate. No ambient noise exists. Your footsteps on the carpet, your breathing, the rustle of your clothing. These are the only sounds in a space designed for music and voices and applause, a space waiting patiently in darkness for its purpose to resume. Bennett School for Girls featured a distinctive elevator, a caged lift in an open shaft, visible from multiple floors, operating from 1929 until the school closed in 1978. When the school was abandoned, the elevator stopped mid-shaft, suspended between floors, slowly rusting in the shadows. For 40 years, that elevator hung there, gradually corroding, its metal cage becoming covered in rust, its cables fraying but holding, a monument to abandonment visible from multiple floors as you walked through the building. The elevator became an icon of the building's decay, photographed extensively by urban explorers, a perfect symbol of arrested motion, of machinery that will never move again, of function transformed into sculpture by abandonment. The elevator's position, suspended, neither up nor down, frozen between destinations, felt metaphorically appropriate for the whole building, which was itself suspended between past and future, between occupation and demolition, hanging in temporal limbo, just as the elevator hung in spatial limbo. The school building was demolished in 2014, and the elevator was destroyed with it, ending its 4-decade suspension, finally reaching its last destination, which was oblivion rather than any flaw. Canfranc International Railway Station sits in the Pyrenees Mountains on the French-Spanish border, opened in 1928 as a grand international terminal designed to facilitate traffic between the two countries. The station is enormous, 200 meters long, with platforms under a vast iron and glass train shed, with elegant Beaux-Arts buildings housing customs offices, waiting rooms, a hotel. The station has been called the Titanic of the mountains, a luxury terminal built on a massive scale that saw very little use. Train service was limited, the international connection was complicated by different rail gauges between France and Spain. World War II disrupted everything, and a 1970 accident destroyed a bridge on the French side, ending international service permanently. The station sat mostly abandoned for decades, seeing only occasional local trains. The massive platforms stood empty. The elegant buildings deteriorated. Snow accumulated inside during winters when broken windows let weather in. The station became a monument to failed ambition, to infrastructure built for a future that never materialized. Recently, there have been restoration efforts, and the station is being slowly brought back into use, though international train service hasn't resumed. But during its decades of abandonment, Canfranc was an extraordinary sight, a palace-sized railway station in the mountains, built for thousands of daily passengers, but seeing almost none. Its grandeur wasted, its purpose unfulfilled. The Haikyo culture in Japan, the word means ruins, includes many abandoned love hotels, those distinctively Japanese short-stay hotels designed for couples seeking privacy, often decorated with kitschy, elaborate themes. As Japan's economy shifted and demographics changed, many love hotels failed and were abandoned, leaving behind their elaborate themed rooms frozen in time. These rooms are surreal in abandonment, 1970s-style spaceships with circular beds and silver walls, rooms designed as carousel horses or jungle scenes or medieval castles, all sitting empty, their neon colors faded, their mechanical features seized, their mirrors cracked, their fantasy purposes unfulfilled. The combination of sexual function, kitschy design, and decay creates a strange aesthetic, something between funny and sad, between tacky and touching. Exploring abandoned love hotels means encountering this strange combination. Rooms designed for pleasure and privacy, now completely public and abandoned. Places meant to be temporary and transactional, now permanent and purposeless. Fantasies made physical that outlasted their usefulness, and now sit as monuments to desires that have moved elsewhere or ceased to exist. Six Flags, New Orleans, also known as Jazzland, was a theme park that opened in 2000 and was destroyed by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The storm flooded the park with contaminated water, damaged the rides, destroyed infrastructure. The park was declared a total loss and abandoned, with no attempt to rebuild or reopen. The roller coasters remain, rusted monuments of iron, their tracks still intact, their cars still sitting on the tracks or in stations, never to move again. When wind blows through the coaster tracks, they hum, the metal vibrating, creating musical notes, turning the park into an enormous wind instrument, into a monument that sings its own elegy. Walking through Six Flags New Orleans is profoundly eerie. The park still has its signage, its cartoon characters painted on walls, its games still set up in booths, but everything is rusted and rotted and overgrown. Alligators live in the park now, swimming through flooded areas. Vegetation grows thick through the midway. The rides stand as rusted sculptures, recognizable but transformed by decay and nature. The park has become a filming location for post-apocalyptic movies and TV shows, providing ready-made ruins, theme park as wasteland. But it's also a memorial to Hurricane Katrina's destruction, to the lives and businesses lost, to a city's trauma made visible in this abandoned playground where children once screamed with joy but now only wind and animals make sound. Château de la Motte-Chandonnier is a 13th century French castle that burned twice, once in the French Revolution, once in 1932, and has sat abandoned since the second fire, slowly deteriorating. What makes this castle unique is how it's decaying. Trees are growing inside, their roots penetrating walls, their trunks rising through rooms and floors, their branches reaching through windows and gaps in the roof. The trees are literally holding the castle together now. Their roots have become part of the structural system, binding stones, preventing collapse. The castle is being slowly consumed by forest, transformed from human architecture to hybrid human-natural structure, from castle to something between castle and grove. In 2017, a crowdfunding campaign raised money to purchase the castle, with thousands of people contributing small amounts, making the castle collectively owned by its crowdfunders. The plan is to stabilize and preserve rather than fully restore, maintaining the castle's romantic ruined state while preventing total collapse. The image of trees growing through castle halls is powerful. Nature reclaiming human space, but gently integrating rather than destroying, creating something new that's neither pure architecture nor pure forest, but a combination, a collaboration between human and natural history. City Methodist Church in Gary, Indiana, was built in 1926 during Gary's boom years when US Steel made the city prosperous and growing. The church was enormous, capacity for 3,000 worshippers, Gothic revival architecture, a tall tower, elaborate stone carving, meant to be a spiritual anchor for the industrial city. But Gary declined as steel industry jobs moved elsewhere, as population fell, as the city struggled economically. City Methodist closed in 1975, unable to maintain the massive building with a shrinking congregation. The church sat abandoned, deteriorating rapidly. The sanctuary's roof eventually collapsed, but this created something beautiful. Sunlight now streams directly into the space, falling in beams onto the crumbling stone pews, creating divine light effects, illumination that seems intentionally dramatic, choreographed by nature and decay rather than architectural design. The collapsed roof allows rain and snow in, accelerating decay but also creating this spectacular lighting. The beams of sun moving across the ruins as the day progresses, illuminating different areas at different times, highlighting the Gothic stone carving, making the destruction somehow beautiful, somehow redemptive. The church has been used for filming. Its ruins are too photogenic to resist, but it continues to deteriorate, probably beyond the point where restoration is feasible. It will likely be demolished eventually, but for now it stands as monument to Gary's decline and to how decay can create unexpected beauty. North Brother Island sits in the East River between the Bronx and Rikers Island, home to Riverside Hospital, where typhoid Mary Mallon was quarantined for decades, forced to live on the island because she was an asymptomatic carrier who refused to stop working as a cook and spreading typhoid. The island later housed a hospital for drug rehabilitation, but this closed in 1963, and the island has been abandoned ever since. The hospital buildings stand empty, slowly collapsing, being consumed by the forest that has grown thick on the island, transforming it from institutional space to wilderness in just a few decades. North Brother Island is off limits to the public, officially closed, accessible only with special permits for researchers or historians. This makes it mysterious, visible from the Bronx shore but unreachable. A secret forest in the middle of New York City, ruins hidden in thick vegetation, history sealed away where most people can't access it. The island is a sanctuary now. Birds nest there, including a large black-crowned night heron colony. The abandoned hospital provides nesting sites, and the isolation provides protection. Nature has fully reclaimed the island, transformed it from place of quarantine and treatment to place of wildlife refuge, from human space to wild space in the heart of the city. Standing in these abandoned rooms, whether Bannerman's shell, Halcyon's dusty halls, Belitz's sun-drenched corridors, or Michigan Central's echoing waiting room, you feel what might be called the weight of the past. These spaces aren't neutral emptiness, but charged absence. Places that remember their purposes, that hold echoes of the people who occupied them, that wait with something like expectation, even though waiting is futile. The sensation is that the building is holding its breath, that it's suspended in anticipation, that it expects some noise that will never come. Voices in the corridors, footsteps on the stairs, the sounds of occupation and use that defined these spaces when they were alive and now are absent, leaving only heavy silence and the sound of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, your own footsteps echoing through emptiness. Let these empty halls settle into your thoughts. Bannerman Castle's Scottish facade on the Hudson, Halcyon Hall's hundreds of silent pianos, Belitz's paint peeling like autumn leaves, the shopping mall where koi swam beneath escalators, Pidhertzi's cold echoing galleries, Eastern State's unique acoustics carrying whispers through cell blocks, Mudhouse Mansion's watchful windows, Michigan Central's raindrops echoing through 18 stories, Miranda Castle surrendering to damp air, Overbrook's ovens cold and hallways moss-carpeted, the Salton Sea's sulphur-scented silence, Grossinger's pool turned indoor garden, the Orpheum preserved in pitch darkness, Bennett's elevator hanging for 40 years, Canfranc, the mountain Titanic, Love hotels frozen in neon decay, Six Flags humming roller coasters, the castle held together by trees, City Methodist's divine light beams, North Brothers' secret forest, and that weight of the past, that sensation of buildings holding their breath, waiting for noise that will never come. This is the silence of abandoned interiors, the stillness of grand spaces built for crowds that never returned, the heavy air of empty halls where dust accumulates and time feels suspended. Rest here in these quiet rooms, these forgotten spaces, these monuments to purposes outlived and dreams unfulfilled. Feel the peace of places where waiting has become permanent, where expectation has transformed into acceptance, where silence has accumulated into something almost holy, almost sacred, a quiet so profound it becomes a presence rather than an absence, filling these empty halls with something that feels, paradoxically, like memory made tangible, like time made visible, like history you can almost touch in the dust-thick air. We journey now to the final frontiers, not into space, but to the ends of Earth itself, to the poles of inaccessibility, where human presence fades to almost nothing, where the only sounds are wind and ice, and the planet's own slow breathing. These are places of eternal ice and high-altitude silence, of deserts so dry that Mars rovers train there, and oceans so remote that astronauts are closer than any land. Let us travel together to these extreme edges, to Point Nemo, where satellites fall into the sea, and to Tristan da Cunha, reachable only by 6-day boat journey, to the Atacama, where no rain has fallen in recorded history, and to Antarctica, where winter darkness lasts for months, to the deepest ocean trench and the quietest room on Earth, to mountains that have never been climbed and islands where unique life evolved in complete isolation. Imagine the profound quiet of these places, not the silence of abandoned buildings, which is stillness imposed on spaces meant for sound, but the silence of places that were never loud, that have always been quiet, that exist at such extremes of temperature or pressure or remoteness that they remain largely untouched by human noise, by human presence, by the constant chatter that fills most of our world. Tonight, we explore seed vaults buried in Arctic mountains and gas craters burning for 50 years in desert silence, lonely lighthouses on Atlantic rocks, and towns blocked by sea ice for 9 months each year. The empty quarter where you can travel hundreds of miles without seeing life, and the chamber so quiet your brain hallucinates sounds to fill the void. We discover that at these ends of Earth, time loses meaning and the world feels as it did millions of years ago, raw, quiet, eternal. So let yourself sink deeper into rest. Feel yourself traveling to these remote places and drift with me to the ends of the Earth, to the silent heavens, to the places where the planet breathes its ancient rhythm. Point Nemo is not a place you can visit, not an island or a landmark, but a mathematical point in the middle of the South Pacific, the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, the point on Earth's surface farthest from any land. The name means no one in Latin, Captain Nemo from Jules Verne, appropriate for a location where no one has ever been, where no one will ever go, because there's no reason to go there, nothing there except deep water. Point Nemo is over 1,600 miles from the nearest land in any direction, farther from shore than almost any other ocean location. The closest land masses are Juicy Island, an uninhabited atoll, and Maha Island in Antarctica, equally uninhabited. The closest inhabited land is over 1,800 miles away. This isolation means that the closest humans to Point Nemo are often the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, orbiting 250 miles overhead, closer than any person on Earth's surface. Because of this extreme remoteness, Point Nemo has been designated as a spacecraft cemetery. When satellites and space stations reach the end of their operational lives, when they need to be deorbited safely, they're often guided to crash at Point Nemo, ensuring that debris falls into empty ocean, far from shipping lanes, far from islands, far from any place where falling wreckage could cause harm. Over 300 spacecraft have been crashed at Point Nemo, including Russia's Mir space station, which was deliberately deorbited in 2001, breaking up as it entered the atmosphere and scattering across the South Pacific. The debris lies on the ocean floor, miles deep, in darkness and cold, in water that sees no boats, no divers, nothing but the slow drift of deep ocean currents moving across metal fragments from space. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is buried deep inside a mountain on Svalbard, a Norwegian archipelago in the Arctic Ocean, about 800 miles from the North Pole. The vault is designed as a backup for the world's crop diversity, a place where seeds from every country can be stored in case of global catastrophe, protecting agricultural biodiversity for future generations. The vault sits 400 feet inside the mountain, carved into permafrost, maintained at 18 degrees in to keep the seeds in deep freeze. The location was chosen for its remoteness, its political stability, and its geology. The permafrost would keep seeds frozen even if the cooling systems failed, and the elevation ensures the vault will remain above sea level even if all ice sheets melt. The entrance features a glowing art installation by Norwegian artist Diveke Sana, a triangular portal lit with fiber optic cables that glow in turquoise and white, creating an ethereal beacon visible across the snow. During the polar night, when the sun doesn't rise for months, this glowing entrance is particularly striking, a technological aurora, a signal of human foresight and preservation efforts shining in the Arctic darkness. Inside, the seed vault is silent and cold. The seeds sit in sealed boxes on metal shelves, frozen, waiting. Most will never be needed, their insurance against catastrophe. But some have already been withdrawn. Seeds from Syria's seed bank were retrieved after that country's civil war destroyed the original collection. The vault worked as designed, preserving agricultural heritage when the original storage was lost to conflict. Tristan da Cunha is the most remote inhabited island in the world, a volcanic island in the South Atlantic, many 500 miles from the nearest continent, South Africa, and even farther from South America. The island has about 250 permanent residents, descendants of the original settlers who arrived in the early 1800s, plus some later arrivals. There is no airport on Tristan da Cunha. The terrain is too mountainous, the winds too strong, the island too small for a runway. The only way to reach the island is by boat from South Africa, a journey that takes 6 days across open ocean, through waters known for rough seas and high winds. This boat service runs only a few times per year, making Tristan perhaps the least accessible, permanently inhabited place on Earth. Life on Tristan da Cunha is defined by isolation. The island has no significant natural harbour, so boats anchor offshore and passengers are ferried to land in small boats, a process that can only happen when weather permits. Sometimes boats arrive but can't land because the sea is too rough, and they must leave without disembarking passengers or cargo. The island is surrounded by the constant roar of the Atlantic, waves crashing against volcanic cliffs, wind whipping across open water, the sound that defines island life, that's always present, that the residents stop consciously hearing, but that would be missed if they ever left for quieter places. This roar is the sound of isolation, of being far from everywhere else, of living on a small piece of rock in the middle of vast ocean. The Quelcaya ice cap in Peru is the largest tropical ice mass in the world, sitting at an elevation of over 18,000 feet in the Andes. This is a place of thin air where every movement requires effort, where breathing is labored, where the atmospheric pressure is less than half what it is at sea level. The ice cap is remote, accessible only by long hikes through high-altitude terrain. The air is so thin that sound travels differently. Voices seem quieter, echoes are shorter. The usual acoustic landscape is changed by the reduced air density. Combined with the vast emptiness of the high Andes, this creates a silence that feels boundless, that seems to stretch forever across mountains and glaciers. The ice cap is also scientifically important. Ice cores drilled from it provide climate data going back thousands of years, showing how temperature and precipitation have changed. revealing patterns that help scientists understand Earth's climate history. The ice is melting faster now than in the past, retreating, losing mass. One more sign of global climate change visible in the shrinking of these tropical glaciers. McMurdo Station in Antarctica is the largest research station on the continent, a city of science that houses up to 1,000 people in summer, but only about 150 in winter. Winter in Antarctica means months of total darkness. At McMurdo's latitude, the sun doesn't rise from late April to late August, creating a 4-month night. Living through Antarctic winter requires adjustment. The darkness is absolute and continuous, not night in the normal sense, with dawn coming eventually, but darkness that persists day after day, week after week, month after month. The cold is extreme, often below 40 degrees C, and the wind is relentless, howling against the station's insulated walls, creating a constant background roar. Inside, life continues under artificial light. Researchers maintain their experiments. Station personnel keep systems running. Everyone adapts to the reversed reality where day and night are arbitrary designations, where the only real distinction is between time inside the warm lit station and time outside in the dark, deadly cold. The station is supplied only in summer when the sea ice breaks up enough for ships to reach it. Winter residents are completely isolated. No flights in or out, no boats, no possibility of evacuation or resupply for months. This isolation creates a unique psychological environment, a sense of being cut off from the world, of living in a bubble of warmth and light, surrounded by dark, frozen vastness. At the South Pole, conditions are even more extreme. The air is so cold and dry that sound doesn't travel as far as it does at sea level. The reduced air density and the cold temperature both affect sound propagation, creating a landscape that feels strangely muffled, where sounds fall flat, where voices don't carry, where the acoustic environment is unlike anywhere else on Earth. The Ambient and Scott South Pole Station sits at 9,300 feet elevation, but because of the cold, the effective altitude is over 10,000 feet. The air is thin, breathing is labored, physical work is exhausting. The station is surrounded by absolutely flat ice in all directions, featureless white extending to the horizon. No landmarks, no variation, just endless ice and the geodesic dome of the station, like a spacecraft landed on an alien planet. The Atacama Desert in northern Chile is the driest place on Earth. Some areas have never recorded rainfall, not in modern times, perhaps not in recorded history, perhaps not for millions of years. The desert is so dry that NASA uses it to test Mars rovers and other equipment designed for the Martian surface, because the Atacama is the closest Earth analog to Mars we have. Dry, cold at night, intensely sunny during the day, almost lifeless. The lack of water creates extraordinary preservation. Materials don't rot or rust significantly. Colors stay bright for decades. The desert is littered with imperfectly preserved artifacts, old mining equipment, abandoned nitrate mining towns where wooden structures still stand after a century, a natural museum created by the absence of moisture. The desert is also extraordinarily quiet. Without vegetation, there are no rustling leaves, no animal sounds. Without moisture, there are no streams or rain. The wind moves across bare rock and sand with minimal sound. The silence is so profound that you can hear your own heartbeat, your blood moving through your ears, the subtle sounds of your own body, that are normally masked by environmental noise. This silence and the clear, dry air make the Atacama ideal for astronomical observatories. Many of the world's most powerful telescopes are located here, taking advantage of the clarity, the lack of light pollution, and the high altitude. At night, the stars are so bright and numerous that the Milky Way casts shadows, that planets are clearly visible, that the sky seems crowded with light. Mount Kailash in Tibet is considered sacred by 4 religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Bon, and has never been climbed. It's not that the mountain is technically impossible to climb. It's about 22,000 feet, challenging but not beyond modern mountaineering capabilities, but that it's spiritually forbidden. The Chinese government doesn't issue climbing permits, respecting the religious significance. The mountain stands alone, distinctive, its 4 faces roughly aligned to the cardinal directions, its slopes unusual for the region, creating a presence that has inspired religious reverence for thousands of years. Pilgrims circumambulate the mountain, walking around its base, a journey of about 32 miles at high altitude, taking several days, performed as a religious practice by thousands annually. The mountain is silent except for wind and the flutter of prayer flags that pilgrims tie along the route. These flags, colored rectangles printed with prayers and mantras, snap in the wind, carrying prayers into the air, creating the only consistent sound beyond natural wind and the crunch of pilgrims' feet on the path. The Sahara Desert features a phenomenon called singing sands. Certain dunes, under the right conditions, produce a low-frequency hum when sand grains slide down their slopes. The sound is created by friction between sand grains, a phenomenon that requires very specific conditions: the right grain size, the right moisture content, the right slope angle. When these conditions align and sand avalanches down a dune, the collective vibration of billions of grains creates a sound that's been described as resembling a cello, an organ, or Gregorian chant, a deep, resonant hum that can last for minutes, that can be heard for miles, that turns the dune into a massive musical instrument. The experience of hearing singing sands is uncanny. You're in silent desert, then suddenly the dune is humming, vibrating, creating sound without any obvious source, as if the desert itself is singing. The sound is loud enough to feel as vibration in your body, to sense as well as hear, creating a full-body acoustic experience in one of Earth's quietest environments. Bishop Rock Lighthouse sits on a tiny rock at the westernmost point of the Isles of Scilly, about 30 miles off the coast of Cornwall, England. The rock is so small that the lighthouse takes up almost all of it. There's barely any rock visible around the tower's base. This makes Bishop Rock one of the world's most exposed lighthouses, sitting directly in the Atlantic, taking the full force of storms with no protection. During major storms, waves completely engulf the tower's base, shooting spray high into the air, sometimes reaching above the light itself, 150 feet up. The lighthouse keepers who once staffed the station, it's automated now, experienced isolation and violence of weather that's difficult to imagine, trapped in a stone tower on a rock, surrounded by furious ocean, unable to leave for weeks or months when weather prevented boat landings. The lighthouse is painted white, creating a stark contrast against the grey-green Atlantic, visible for miles, serving as a marker for shipping, warning of the dangerous rocks that surround it. The sound at Bishop Rock during storms is overwhelming. The roar of waves, the boom of water hitting stone, the shriek of wind, creating an environment of pure elemental fury. The door to hell in Turkmenistan is officially called the Darvaza gas crater, a 200-foot wide hole in the ground that has been burning continuously since 1971. The crater was created when Soviet geologists drilling for natural gas in the desert caused the ground to collapse, creating a crater filled with methane. Fearing that the escaping methane would poison nearby towns, they decided to burn it off, expecting it would consume the gas in a few weeks. 50 years later, the crater is still burning. Natural gas continues to seep from underground, feeding the flames, creating a perpetual fire in the middle of the Karakum Desert. At night, the crater glows orange, visible for miles, casting flickering light across the sand, creating shadows that dance and shift. Despite the flames, the crater is surprisingly quiet. Fire doesn't make much noise. There's no wood crackling, no material being consumed violently. There's the sound of gas escaping, a low hiss or roar depending on where you stand. But the burning itself is almost silent. The experience is primarily visual, the glow, the heat, the dancing flames, with sound being secondary, creating a strange disconnect between the dramatic visual and the relatively quiet acoustic. Itakor Tormait, Greenland, is one of the most remote towns on Earth, located on the eastern coast of Greenland, accessible by helicopter or by boat for only about 3 months per year, when the sea ice breaks up enough to allow navigation. For the other 9 months, the town is completely blocked off. No boats can reach it. Helicopters are the only connection to the outside world, and even those are limited by weather. The town has about 350 residents who hunt and fish, maintaining traditional Inuit practices while also having modern amenities like internet and satellite TV. But the isolation is profound. The nearest other settlement is hundreds of miles away. Supplies come in frequently. Medical emergencies require helicopter evacuation if weather permits. Winter in Itokor Tormiit means months of darkness, extreme cold, sea ice extending far offshore, creating a landscape of frozen ocean and frozen land that's difficult to distinguish. The only sounds are wind, the crack and groan of shifting sea ice, and the occasional howl of sledge dogs. The silence between these sounds is absolute, a quiet that feels heavy, that seems to have physical presence. In these remote Arctic towns, the aurora borealis is a regular phenomenon, appearing frequently during the dark months, moving across the sky in curtains and spirals of green and sometimes red or purple light. The aurora is silent. It's a visual phenomenon, light created by solar particles interacting with Earth's upper atmosphere, producing no sound. However, some people in the Arctic claim they can hear the aurora, a faint crackling or hissing sound that accompanies bright displays. Scientists have been skeptical, arguing that the aurora occurs too high in the atmosphere, 60+ miles up, to produce audible sound. But recent research suggests that under certain conditions, the electrical activity associated with auroras might create audible sounds close to the ground, vindicating generations of Arctic residents who insisted they could hear the lights dancing overhead. The empty quarter, Rub al-Khali in Arabic, is the largest continuous sand desert in the world, covering most of the southern Arabian Peninsula, an area larger than France. It's one of Earth's most inhospitable Environments extremely hot in summer, cold in winter, almost entirely waterless, with massive sand dunes reaching heights of 800 feet. You can travel for hundreds of miles in the empty quarter without seeing a single living thing. No plants, no animals, no insects, just sand and more sand, dunes in all directions, stretching to the horizon, continuing beyond, seemingly endless. The emptiness is profound, creating a landscape that feels lunar, alien, not quite like Earth. The silence in the empty quarter is equally profound. Wind moves across sand with minimal sound. There are no rocks to rattle, no vegetation to rustle, no water to gurgle. Just wind and sand and the sound of your own footsteps, your own breathing, your own heartbeat. The desert absorbs sound rather than reflecting it, creating an environment where even loud sounds seem muted, where acoustic space feels compressed. Bedouin traditionally crossed the empty quarter using stars and landmarks known only to them, traveling at night when temperatures were cooler, resting during the brutal midday heat. Now GPS and vehicles make crossing easier, but the desert remains fundamentally inhospitable, a place humans visit but don't stay, a vast emptiness in Earth's most populated continent. Socotra Island lies in the Arabian Sea about 200 miles off the coast of Yemen, so isolated that its ecology evolved independently, creating species found nowhere else on Earth. About a third of Socotra's plant life is endemic, unique to this island, existing nowhere else in the world. The most famous is the dragon's blood tree, Dracaena cinnabari, with its distinctive umbrella-shaped canopy and trunk that bleeds red sap when cut. This sap has been harvested for thousands of years, used as medicine, dye, and varnish. The trees look alien, prehistoric, creating landscapes that don't quite look like Earth, that seem designed for a science fiction film. The island's isolation preserved these unique species for millions of years, allowing evolution to proceed independently, creating an ecosystem unlike anywhere else. But this isolation also makes the ecosystem fragile. Climate change, development, and the introduction of non-native species threaten these unique plants and animals that evolved in isolation and may not be able to compete with continental species. The Kerguelen Islands in the southern Indian Ocean are known as the Desolation Islands, named by Captain Cook, who found them bleak and uninviting. The islands are indeed desolate, treeless, windswept, cold, remote, located about 2,000 miles from any continent in the Furious 50s latitude, where westerly winds circle the globe almost unimpeded by land. The winds are so strong and constant that they've influenced evolution on the islands. The Kerguelen Islands have only one native insect, a small fly called Chalicopteryx moselii. This fly is wingless. Evolution eliminated wings because any insect that could fly would immediately be blown out to sea and lost. The only insects that survived were those that couldn't fly, that stayed close to the ground, that couldn't be carried away by the relentless wind. The islands are now home to a small French research station, but most of the islands remain uninhabited, home only to seabirds and seals, to the indigenous wingless fly, to the wind that never stops blowing, that defines everything about these islands, that makes them some of Earth's most inhospitable territory. The Microsoft anechoic chamber in Redmond, Washington, holds the Guinness World Record for the quietest place on Earth. An anechoic chamber is a room designed to absorb all sound and eliminate all echo, creating an environment of absolute quiet. The Microsoft chamber achieves a background noise level of 20.6 decibels, quieter than the threshold of human hearing, technically silent. The chamber is built with thick concrete walls and lined with fiberglass wedges that absorb sound from any direction. The floor is a mesh suspended above more sound-absorbing material, so even footsteps don't create echoes. The result is a space where sound simply disappears, where speaking feels like speaking into a void that swallows your voice, where acoustic space ceases to exist in any normal sense. In the anechoic chamber, you begin hearing things you've never heard before. The sound of your own heartbeat, the movement of your joints, the rush of blood through your veins, the internal sounds of your body that are normally masked by environmental noise. Your breathing seems impossibly loud. Swallowing sounds like a roar. Most people cannot stay in the chamber for more than 45 minutes. The absolute silence is disorienting, disturbing. The human brain expects environmental sound, uses it to orient, to maintain equilibrium, to feel connected to reality. Without external sound, some people experience hallucinations, phantom sounds created by the brain trying to fill the void, trying to maintain the acoustic environment it expects. The chamber is used for testing, speakers, microphones, any product that makes or detects sound, but it's also a profound psychological experience, a demonstration of how much we rely on sound, how much our sense of reality depends on the acoustic environment, how disturbing pure silence can be. The Great Himalayan National Park in northern India is a UNESCO World Heritage Site protecting high-altitude forests and alpine meadows, home to rare species like the snow leopard and Himalayan brown bear. The park is remote and difficult to access, with minimal infrastructure, few trails, and regulations that limit human presence. The result is a silent sanctuary, a place where human noise is almost absent, where the sounds are purely natural. Wind through pine forests, water flowing in glacial streams, the calls of birds, and occasionally the distant roar of an avalanche or the rumble of a landslide. The high elevation creates thin air that changes how sound travels, making the acoustic environment distinctive. The park represents what much of the Himalayas was like before human development, before roads and villages and tourism, preserving not just the ecosystem but the sonic environment, the soundscape that existed before human noise became ubiquitous. Standing in the Great Himalayan National Park, listening to the silence between natural sounds, you're experiencing something increasingly rare. An environment where human sound is absent, where the earth sounds as it did for billions of years before our species evolved. The Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench is the deepest point in Earth's oceans, about 36,000 feet down, nearly 7 miles beneath the surface. At this depth, the pressure is over 1,000 times greater than at sea level, crushing pressure that would instantly destroy most structures, that requires specially designed vessels to withstand. At this depth, water behaves differently. The intense pressure compresses it slightly, making it denser, heavier, almost like lead. Movement through this water requires more energy. Everything is slower, heavier, more difficult. The deep is completely dark. Sunlight doesn't penetrate beyond about 1,000 feet, so everything below that is in absolute darkness, lit only by bioluminescence from the creatures adapted to these conditions. And it's cold, just above freezing, creating an environment of crushing pressure, absolute darkness, and near freezing temperature. Sound travels differently at these depths. The pressure affects sound propagation, creating acoustic channels where sound can travel for vast distances horizontally but not vertically. Whales and submarines use these channels to communicate over hundreds or thousands of miles. But at the Challenger Deep itself, the crushing pressure and dense water create an acoustic environment unlike anything at the surface. Only a handful of people have visited the Challenger Deep. James Cameron in 2012, Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard in 1960, and Victor Vescovo in 2019. Each descent took hours, descending slowly through the water column, through layers of increasing pressure and darkness, finally reaching the bottom where sediment lies undisturbed, except for the rare visits of these explorers. At these ends of Earth, whether Point Nemo's isolation, the Atacama's dryness, Antarctica's cold darkness, the Challenger Deep's crushing pressure, or the anechoic chamber's artificial silence, time loses its normal meaning. Without the usual markers of human activity, without the rhythms of daily life, without the sounds and sights we use to organize our experience, time becomes something different, something slower, something that feels more like geology than human experience. The world at these extremes feels ancient, feels like it did millions of years ago, before humans existed, before our voices and machines filled the planet with noise. These places are raw, quiet, eternal, not in the sense of unchanging, but in the sense of changing on timescales so vast that human time periods become meaningless, where a human lifetime is a blink, where even recorded history is brief. As stars wheel over the most remote peaks and oceans, as auroras dance over Arctic settlements and satellites fall into the Pacific, as wind moves across empty deserts and ice shifts in Antarctic darkness, the planet breathes in a slow, ancient rhythm. This rhythm predates us, will continue after us, a lullaby that has played since Earth formed, that will play until the sun expands and consumes the inner planets billions of years from now. Let these remote places settle into your consciousness. Point Nemo, where astronauts are closer than any land, the seed vault glowing in Arctic darkness, Tristan da Cunha's 6-day boat journey, Quelcaya's thin air and boundless silence, McMurdo's 4-month night, the South Pole's muffled soundscape, Atacama so dry it's a Mars analogue, Kailash unclimbed and sacred, the Sahara's singing sands, Bishop Rock engulfed by storms, the door to hell burning for 50 years, Itokor Turmit icebound for 9 months, the empty quarters hundreds of lifeless miles, Socotra's dragon blood trees, Kerguelen's wingless fly, the anechoic chamber where silence drives people mad, the great Himalayan sanctuary, the Challenger Deep 7 miles down, and that ancient rhythm, that planetary breathing, that lullaby playing since time began. This is Earth at its extremes, at its edges, at the places where human presence fades and the planet's own voice becomes audible, where silence isn't absence but presence, where remoteness creates not loneliness, but connection to something vast and old and patient. Rest here at the ends of Earth, in the silent heavens, in the places where time moves differently and the world breathes its slow rhythm. Feel the peace of ultimate remoteness, of places beyond human scale, of Earth as it has always been beneath our temporary presence. Good night, traveler. Good night, Earth. Breathing in your ancient rhythm, singing your patient song, turning beneath the stars, Sleep well in the knowledge that these remote places exist, that not all of Earth has been transformed, that silence and emptiness and extreme conditions preserve places that remain essentially unchanged, essentially eternal, essentially themselves. The planet endures. The ice accumulates and melts and accumulates again. The deserts shift grain by grain across millennia. The ocean depths remain dark and cold and crushing. The aurora dances in silence overhead. And through it all, Earth continues its rotation, its orbit, its place in the cosmos. A small blue planet hosting temporary life, including us, including this moment, including your rest now in the peaceful knowledge that beyond our noise and activity, the planet remains, ancient and patient and serene. Sleep well among the silent peaks and empty deserts, the frozen poles and crushing depths. You are at home here, on this patient Earth, in this corner of the cosmos, part of the ancient rhythm, part of the planetary breath, part of the story that has no beginning we can know and no ending we can see, just continuation, just the slow dance of geology and climate and life and time, all moving together in patterns too vast to comprehend, but beautiful to witness, calming to contemplate, peaceful to rest within. Good night.